Knight f5.
He has ported.
Yeah, but
MVL.
knight g7. Yep, and now the king comes over to
Wow.
capture g-pawn. So, whew.
Top French player, one of the strongest grandmasters in the world with the white pieces. He has spoiled his advantage. Valentino saves the game for the Blockbusters.
All right, Anna, welcome, welcome. This is Grandmaster Robert Hess here with Anna Rudolph, and we are going to be doing coverage of the two playoff matches that begin, well, one begins in 5 minutes. Anna, I know I'm excited. How are you feeling about today's action?
I'm very excited, Robert. It's the first time that I'm commentating with you, and I just would like you to sit back and show everyone how impressive your t-shirt is for today.
You know, we have the Stockholm Snowballs playing against the Ljubljana Turtles, and I am a huge fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I dug this one out of my closet, and you know what? We have Borshek playing as Donatello. Donatello's right there on my shirt. I hope everyone can see that, and I know I'm very excited for that match.
I'm also excited about it, and I was also trying to look like a themed commentator, so I dressed up as the French flag.
Well, you're looking excellent, and I know you're eating some croissant and some raspberries, excuse me. So, you know, you had your French meal. I had Indian food because I was watching the Delhi Dynamite and the Mumbai Movers play. And I don't know, we have some predictions based on some of the Chess.com stats for these two matches today, the pre-match predicted outcomes. And as we see here, the Stockholm Snowballs are favored over the Turtles 9-7, and the Migraines 9-7 over the Cannes Blockbusters. Do you think that's an accurate and fair assessment of what we can expect for today?
Well, some of the predictions I have been agreeing with in the previous matches, and some I thought that it was a bit too harsh if you just look at the rating. And here it's also about previous results as far as I know, so it's more accurate than simply taking into account the rating average and the rating of the players. I have picked the Migraines to win today.
Okay.
And the Snowballs. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair because I have the Migraines making it to the Final Four, as I believe you do, and Stockholm did win the division. I have the pairings that I can pull up for the matches just so we can see who's playing, and here we are. So we see with the Ljubljana Turtles versus the Stockholm Snowballs, board one, Luka Lenic. For the Turtles, he's been very strong all year. He started off very hot. Unfortunately, hit a bit of a tough stretch, but still, I mean, 2650 FIDE rated player. He's a force to be reckoned with. And Anna, what do you make of the kind of this lineup? Because it seems pretty even for the most part across the board.
It does look pretty even. I don't know which board will be crucial. I feel like in both matches, actually, board 4 could be a very, very important factor. And if we just look at the board 4 ratings, that's what we usually see on board 4. Like Lucas Kuala, 2100, Marcus also 2179. But there's this higher rated player in the Cannes Blockbusters team, and I wonder if they can compensate with their board 4 performing very well for having their top 3 boards lower rated than the Migraines.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting. And both teams boast ratings above 2,500. And look at that Valentina Gunina there on board 3. I have an image of her that I will bring up right now, along with some of these Migraines players. So Valentina Gunina on the Cannes Blockbusters, very talented, especially in rapid play. She won the, was it the Gibraltar Chess Festival rapid play, or was it the London Chess Classic?
In the London Chess Classic, she beat everyone, literally. Super Grandmaster, one after the other. So she's really capable of beating any of these stars, and we shall see if she can do some magic today and crush Mr. MVL, maybe.
Well, and speaking of MVL, I have his player card right here, Leon Beast on Chess.com. He is a beast. He's known by the moniker MVL, the man with 3 names, the best Frenchman of all time, though he likes to give Alexander Elyokin some credit for playing for France and, of course, being a world champion, but he's in phenomenal shape. And you have Etienne Bacrot, Baki 83, and he had a tough start. I don't know if you remember this, Anna, but at the beginning of the Pro Chess League, he lost 2 games in the first week. I believe it was against the Reykjavik
I remember
Puppets.
that, and he also had some very terrible blunders, which is not something that happens normally on his level.
Yeah, and someone who does not blunder is Yannick Gazzoli. He is speedy, he is strong, he's been playing very well for the Migraines. And last but not least, I believe this is your favorite player, Marc-Andrea Maurizi.
Oh, he's just so adorable. He's only 11 years old. And I think this is a great board for the Migraines because the moment the rating averages are taken is last autumn. This boy, this cute little 11-year-old boy, future champion in my eyes, his rating was 1947. So for the rating average, he counts as a 1900. But right now, his live rating is almost 2200.
Wow.
Which is huge. So he is capable of much more than his rating.
Yeah, and some other players capable much more than the rating. I have Luca Scuhala, who is the board 4 for the Turtles. He's going to hope to be the Michelangelo or Raphael or one of the lesser known Turtles, and if you're taking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into account. And he's been performing very well this year. And of course, for Stockholm, there is no Stockholm without Georg Meyer, the Swedish legend who is well known to the Chess.com community. He's won how many Title Tuesdays? Maybe like 8 or something ridiculous, and too many to count. So he'll have his hands full though with players like Borshek for the Turtles, who goes by the username Donatello, and thus is my favorite player of the round.
Yeah, I can understand your love for Donatello. I like Leonardo a lot. I've been talking to Robert about the Ninja Turtles just before we went live, and we were discussing all these serious issues about which Ninja Turtle we favor and all these concepts. So you might hear us talking about that as well, but we will mainly focus on the games once the first round begins for the Turtles and the Snowballs.
And it looks like the games have actually just begun, so perfect timing here as we speak about the Ninja Turtles. They're up and ready for a fight. Now, I don't know if they're ready for a snow fight, which, of course, in Stockholm, they clearly are.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
You know, I always appreciate how supportive you are, so I will, I am proud to be doing commentator alongside you. And here we have, I'll start with this Georg Meyer game, because if you look at Luca Scuhala, he played an exchange French, hoping to probably try to make a draw here against Meyer.
Let me catch up with you. I'm opening all the games that we will be talking about.
Absolutely.
And I just love these handles. They already had the Ninja Turtle handles last year, and this year they are even more serious about it. So that's team spirit. So pick a cartoon where you have these 4 main characters.
Yeah, no, team spirit for sure. And between teams like Reykjavik, Ljubljana, and others across the globe, some very serious competitors and some great camaraderie. And here, Anna, I mean, this is typical from the Whites' perspective, is you're just sort of developing your pieces, hoping that with the symmetrical pawn structure, then you can hold a draw against a much higher rated player. So I don't play the French. You certainly do play the French. I know we've had this conversation before. But Anna, how do you feel when a low rated player plays the exchange against you?
That's when I regret my decision for learning and loving the French. But yes, I believe that even though it's of course not the most pleasant to fight against someone who's playing for a draw, so clearly to choose the French exchange variation and then play this annoying variation with Queen F3, because this is one of the best lines for White. So it's really a line where I feel like Black, of course, has a way to equalize, but this is not what Georg Meyer wants to do. So he should somehow find some kind of an imbalance in the position. They are just trading queens.
Yep. I was going to say, look at this. Queens are traded, and now the imbalance is in the form of these opposite colored bishops. You see the white bishop on a light square, the black bishop on a dark square, and typically when that happens, we see it can be an imbalance in the endgame, because now the black bishop, for example, if it can somehow snake its way to c1, it can put pressure on this pawn on b2. Of course, that's a long story and not really going to happen anytime soon, but something to keep an eye on. But this game is, I'm sorry to say, quite boring, because if Lawrence...
for the moment.
If Lawrence Trent were here, he would make fun of how, oh, Georg Meyer, he's in an ending? How shocking. Well, another ending for Meyer, but not really his choice.
Let me just add that I think he's going to win in 15 to 20 moves.
Wow, that is a bold
No, maybe it's
statement.
a bit too quick, but I think he will win this game. I'm pretty convinced because I trust his endgame skills. And yeah, maybe 15 and 20 moves is a bit too short for this type of position, but I really think that Meyer will somehow manage to get an advantage. We'll come back to this game later.
Okay, so where should we go to next?
Let's go board by board. Let's go for board 2 of the snowballs.
Okay, that is Grandmaster
Yevgeny Agrest.
And exactly. And
he
I have
is
this game here.
the father of the manager of the snowballs, Ina Agrest, who also played a couple of games, and I believe she's now watching and cheering for the snowballs, obviously, as a captain.
Yep, she's rooting as a captain, she's rooting as a daughter, and she is just, well, as a fan of chess and a strong chess player herself, she of course is looking to see her team do well. And here with the black pieces on I think Evgeny's doing all right, though sometimes I'm concerned about my piece placement and coordination when I get into a position like this. For example, where does the black king go? It can't really go to the c file, because then if the king, say, goes to c7, you immediately have to face, well, knight takes b5 check wins a pawn on the spot, because our bishop opens up to the enemy bishop, but more to the point was allowing rook c1 with a very important tempo is also not favorable from black's point of view.
Yeah, I agree with you that that's a key question, what to do with the black king. So far, Agrest hasn't used much time, so I believe that he's still aware of the position, though at this point he started thinking more.
Yeah, I would say it's difficult as well because black is further advanced on the queen side, which sounds like a good thing, having more space, having more control over the advanced squares, but it means that a move like pawn a2 to a4 will immediately target black's queenside pawn structure and further open the position, which should be, at least optically, in white's favor. And so knight c5 played to maybe lessen the pain along the queen side, but still, I think that white should be quite content with the position at hand.
I agree with you. I think that here the turtles have a good position. Question is how much of an advantage this could be.
Yeah, I mean, being able to convert these types of advantages is the hardest thing in chess. When you have a slightly better position with sustained pressure and saying, you know what, I know I'm better, but how do I turn this into a full point rather than just making my opponent suffer to make a draw? So it remains to be seen how Stepanek will do so. I think now he can put a rook on d1. He has to decide, do I want to trade this pair of knights or do I put my knight on d4, for example? So he has an important decision to make here. Does he want to take on c5 and once trading on c5, start playing moves like pawn to a4 and rook to c1 and things like that? But at the same time, I guess white has to be careful not to be too slow, because if b4 happens from black, then the knight can come on e4 and all of a sudden black is the one who's gaining an initiative.
I agree with you. He has just played knight to d4, clearly going for the ideas that you have showed. And now this bishop on b4 really feels misplaced.
Yeah, and you have to be very wary of discoveries. We showed earlier the king c7 runs right into knight takes b5 check, opening the bishop attack on the other. And now especially a3 is sort of a threat, right? If king e7, simply a3. Yeah, just you attack the bishop, you force the exchange on the c3 square, because if that bishop retreats to a5, then b4 does a nice job forking two minor pieces.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, all sorts of discovered attacks are always in the air, and knight e4 would obviously be a big blunder, because once we take on e4 with the knight, we are defending the d2 bishop at the same time.
Right. No, absolutely. So this is very tricky position, and that's a very, very good point that sometimes I believe more inexperienced players miss, is they make a move like knight e4, hoping to make use of a pin, but once that knight captures on e4, like you said, the knight comes back to protect d2, and that means that white is the one netting an extra piece.
Yeah.
So should we go on to some of these other battles?
So with these two boards, what would be our evaluation for the moment? On board 1, we thought it was equal. Yeah, but we trust Georg Meyer's endgame skills.
In Georg, we trust.
On board 2 for the snowballs, we actually like white's position more.
Yes.
Which is the turtles.
Yep.
Could compensate for their board 1. Let's see the other two boards.
Okay, so let's see this game between Borishek and Alexienko. This is a great matchup. Alexienko is a pretty young player. His rating here is 2563. As you mentioned earlier, Anna, the ratings used are from a while back. but he's gained a bunch of rating points in recent months, had strung together a few good tournaments, and now with the white pieces, he has his bishop on a long diagonal, but at the same time, I like how advanced black is on the queen's side. These positions are very difficult to assess, and honestly, I don't have that much familiarity playing the positions. Of course, I've studied many games of the sort where white can make a move like e5, just to show everyone e5 and it takes, and sometimes f5 is played, and you're just breaking open the position of the king's side and taking away this e5 square from the black knight. So it's a thematic sacrifice where even if you give away several pawns, you might be launching an attack quick enough to make up for that material deficit.
Yeah, those are clearly the typical strategic plans in this position. And as you were pointing out, Alexeyenko, he is a very young, only 20-year-old grandmaster, gaining rating points. So the rating average that they count for in case of the snowballs, and that's actually favorable for them, having a lower rating the moment the ratings are taken from. But I agree with you that I actually like more Borishek's position. And since you are a fan of Donatello, I think personally here we should be happy that black is doing fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, a huge fan of Donatello. He's the wisest of the Ninja Turtles. He's patient. He does his calculation here. Well, you better hope that Borishek has done that, because, like I said, at some point, ideas with e5 and f5 are about to blast open the position, and you have to be ready to handle these kind of threats. So the bishop on h4 is a surprisingly nice piece, pinning this knight on g3 to the rook on e1, and it can always come back to the f6 square if need be to take over that diagonal. So, interesting position to be sure. So where does that leave us? The last game of that we have not looked at yet, between Luka Lenic with the black pieces and Marcus Orndal with the white pieces. He is Norway's board 4 with the white pieces, and Ljubljana's board 1 with black. So Anna, this position, it sort of looks like, it came from a Caro-Kann, but it sort of looks like some sort of closed position, even from like a closed Sicilian type or something of the sort. But black has gained a lot of space there on the queen side, and white is trying to aim for this pawn move to f4. So how do you evaluate a position like this?
These are always so complicated, and certainly I would not have guessed that this is coming from the Caro-Kann. It does not look like one. I think that I'm always scared as black in these positions because f4, f5 is looking really dangerous, and that's the flank where you have your king. At the same time, if I look at the queen side, I feel like black's attack on the queen side is very advanced, just like in the previous game we have looked at. Yeah, so it's a mess. How do you evaluate it, Robert?
Well, I asked you first so I could gather my thoughts as I'm uncertain. And I remember a very instructive game from, I'm blanking the term, Gibraltar, where Hikaru Nakamura had the black pieces, and he was playing Federico Perez Ponce. And in that game, white was successful in playing this move f4, and black did something kind of smart, not at this given position, in this given moment, and played an idea with bishop h6. The idea being that once I trade off the dark square bishops, it looks like at first glance that black's king is in trouble because you've lost a fianchetto piece. But if white ever captures on e5 and allows, say, a trade on these squares, the e5 square is so ripe for the black pieces. You just put your knights protecting that square, and it just dominates the board, especially this very poor bishop on g2. This light square bishop struggles against a knight that blockades the pawn that would open up the diagonal.
So true, so true. And that's very instructive that you have just mentioned, that it looks like we are attacking black's king if we get rid of the bishop, but actually white can get into strategic problems. This positionally very important square, the e5 square. Knight d7 is a useful move in that sense, already preparing for f4.
Yeah, because now you can even consider capturing on f4, and white can no longer capture back with the pawn, as the pawn is overloaded defending the knight on h4, which is a very useful chess terminology, overloading.
Exactly. And if you have to take back with the bishop or the rook, that means that black has an outpost on the e5 square. That's what he wants.
Absolutely, that's a gorgeous square indeed. So, so far looking good for black on this board. Let's hop back over to Georg Meyer, and I'll keep an eye on when the next match is starting, but not yet. So we have these 4 games between Stockholm and Ljubljana, and Georg Meyer with the black pieces. I don't love his position, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think that he's clearly trying to fight for the win, And it's super difficult when someone plays the exchange French against you. But I don't know, isolated pawns are always make me a little bit nervous in the endgame.
Okay, I give him 10 more moves to get a more visible advantage.
I see what you're doing here. You're going to keep prolonging it until you see it actually some sort of real advantage in the position, not just a rating advantage. But Skuhala, you got to give Skuhala some credit. I mean, he's doing everything right thus far.
No, of course, this is not to say that Luca Skuhala is not a strong player. This is simply that I trust so much the endgame skills of Mr. Mayer that I believe that he can win this game easily. This is very much his kind of chess. This is how he wins 9 games out of 10.
You are absolutely correct.
I trust him.
No, you're absolutely correct. And as I said before, in Georg we trust. So that should be a new slogan for the Stockholm Snowballs. And because he is their team leader, he's the pride and joy of Sweden in chess. I mean, he's just such a, I guess he doesn't play for Sweden technically, but he's been living there, I believe, and playing for Stockholm. So he's definitely incorporated into their chess culture. And I want to give a shout out to the chess, the twitch.tv/Pro Chess League chat. Lots of great faces there. Distant Fire, ChessBay94, Liam Chez 12. I mean, these are very familiar faces. Glad that you have nothing better to do on your Tuesday than watch Pro Chess League. And I mean that as a compliment.
Robert, what are you saying? Everyone has been waiting for this day. Every week, ever since the Pro Chess League started, I see it marked on everyone's calendar. The Wednesdays, the Super Saturdays, and now Tuesday, because it's a rest day at the candidates.
You're absolutely right. I'm just joking around, but everyone should be glad to be here. Not because I'm talking, absolutely not because because the one and only Anna Rudolph is my co-commentator, and she is phenomenal. It's my first time having the
You're too
pleasure.
nice, Robert. You're too nice.
It's the first time having the pleasure, honestly, and I'm very happy to be here. And Anna, I know you're a French player, and so I have to keep picking your brain about this, but knight b3 played immediately by Skuhala after capturing on c5, and that knight on b3 not only attacks the bishop, but cements control over that d4 square. And what black really wants to do more than anything else is push this pawn from d5 to d4 and trade it, because it becomes a weakness. And I really like white's position in this game.
Me too. That's the problem. I think it should still be complicated, and I still believe that Mayer will win it. But I'm not a fan of isolated pawns. Everyone who follows my streams knows that I would rather prefer playing against the isolated pawn, because I look at that as a weakness and not so much as a dynamic advantage for me. I don't believe in the attacking possibilities, even with the queen on the board, that much as if it was a weak pawn. So I look at it as I think that d4 is a very nice square for one of the knights of white. Everything is under control for the moment, but it's Georg Mayer. Let's come back to this game in 5 minutes.
Okay, I agree with that assessment there. So how about we go over to this game between Borishek and Alexienko, because it seems like the action's been heating up a bit. What black did, as I scroll back to where we once were, is once that bishop came to h4 that we thought looked annoying, we saw black let his move b4 last. And so white tried to take control over the newly loosened light squares, in particular the c4 square, but also the bishop can always come to b5 to be a bit of a nuisance. So a4, expanding on the queen side. And after this series of moves here, rook a2, trade on f6, and bishop b5, I mean, both sides have their pluses here. That bishop on b5 is very nice. That pin is very annoying, but black has this beautiful rook on now 2 rooks on the a file, controlling that side of the board. So Anna, how do you evaluate a position like this?
I still think that it's really messy, but I love open files. I love when you can actually get your rook to the second rank. So I would really be happy about black's rook situation. I just wonder if he will not get into trouble because of this pressure now with the b5 bishop and the knight coming to c4. So it's very concrete suddenly.
Yeah, you have a great point. That's chess terminology, concrete, which means you really have to calculate specific moves now, because the move e5 is certainly threatened in any given moment. The knight on b6 and d7 are pretty awkward. What they're really doing is protecting one another, but they're not actually attacking anything. And if white is successfully able to get this move e5 in, which doesn't seem quite ready yet, but if you are able to get that move in, then white is the one who's pushing forward and creating some passed pawns. However, that move is not so easy to play either. And black can consider making the move h4 as just one possibility to kick the knight from g3. And I don't know. I don't feel confident to say that either side is better. I think it's very messy.
It is messy. I think sometimes the chat would be like, oh, why can't they say who is better? But there are these games where you just need to admit that it's complicated. It's not to say that we don't want to take a side. It's just that it is really, really messy. So you can't really pick who is better unless you are a chess engine.
Yeah, and I certainly am not, and you certainly aren't either. So
we don't like using chess engines. So if you want to use it, that's up to you. But we are not here to tell you what would the engine say. We are here to tell you the human evaluation, and it is a really messy position. It's complicated.
You're absolutely right. Rook c2, I think, is a nice looking move because now the second rook can come to a2. You had pointed this out. You love your rooks down there on the enemy territory on the 7th rank. And so with those rooks lining up, the rook can also come to c3 to attack the queen on f3. So I think black is the one gaining steam. And speaking of gaining steam, I just put my eye on this game between Luka Lenic and Marcus Orndal, and we left off on move 18. But look what's happened.
Whoa, what has happened? I've just turned to this game.
I mean,
what is it?
White went forward with an attack or an attempted attack, and now we see that he kind of gave away a knight. And I don't know if that was intentional in the slightest, because it seems pretty bizarre to give away this piece here. But the problem is, black can't take on f5 with the queen pinning the pawn to the king. But after f takes e5 on a knight takes e5, you have to move your queen, and now that's a piece on f5. So this is very strange looking decision making by white.
Was this a blunder, or really he believes in this attack? Because there are so many black pieces defending the g8 king. I don't think that actually he has compensation for the piece.
No, definitely not. It's a blunder, a very strange blunder as well. And black is down nearly 5 minutes on the clock, but when you're up a piece, you're up a piece. So it should be relatively easy to convert this at this point.
Wow, that was a big mistake by Orndal. Though the rating difference would have suggested that Lenic was obviously the favorite in this game, but being a favorite doesn't mean that you blunder against your opponent. So it was definitely a big mistake, even though white is a lower rated player.
Yeah, and there's the one piece of good news that you can give white here is that this bishop on g2 is going to try to open up on this diagonal soon. So pawn takes, you may be wondering, why didn't white take a free pawn on f5? Well, white determined that taking this pawn, getting a second pawn for the lost piece, that it's not worth it considering this bishop is a big pawn on g2. Instead, playing queen g5 allows the, oh, didn't mean to do whatever I just did. I almost downloaded something. I tried to download the game. But by playing queen g5, as in the game continuation, now pawn takes f5 allows that bishop to gain some new life. Yeah,
it's important. Good point to show it. So he can't even take that pawn for the piece, which really means that it's a position where soon white could just resign.
Yeah, but the clock situation is not looking good for Lenic. He really has to be careful here. You're up a piece, your king is a little bit exposed, but not tragically so. And I don't know, you can't just sit and wait too long. But what's going, I mean, should we?
Yeah, I did not look at the clock, and now that you have mentioned it, I really wonder, what is he calculating? It doesn't feel like such a dangerous position, but maybe he wants to find the most accurate way of just finishing off his opponent.
Right, and speaking of, well, I just say a new game, well, not new, but Borishek versus Alexienko, all of a sudden black has a queen versus two rooks, because using your strategy of rook c2, following up with a second rook, and went rook f2. Now, normally two rooks are more points, more valuable than a queen.
Yeah.
But considering that the f4 pawn falls, and now the black knight can maybe make its way to the e5 square, perhaps black's not so bad off, although I hate this bishop on b7.
I was going to say that too. I love the fact that he has created the e5 square for his pieces, but I just wish this bishop could fly to d3.
Yeah, I mean, if that bishop could get to d3, that would be, firstly, it'd be epic, because I've never seen a chess piece do that. But also, it would just, the flying bishop is a new concept to me. But, it's look at that piece. It's never going to get out of its box. And, okay, trading on c4. You can just
take back. Takes there. So next move, knight e5. Yeah, until this point we can agree, but the bishop is still on b7. If white takes on e5, what you guys want to do is to keep the square for your pieces and take back with the queen. Don't create the d5 protected pass pawn for your opponent.
Right, that would be a big blunder as that pawn is very free to advance. And
So
knight,
queen takes, and then what's the route for the bishop to be improved? Bishop to c8 and then try to push on the king side? How do you make this bishop become alive?
actually, that's a pretty smart idea, and it's worth mentioning to the crowd that knight takes d6 is not a good move because knight f3 check comes in, and there's a big problem. One is black can always bail out with a draw. After queen g3 check, if the king goes to f1, queen goes to f3. And if the king goes to h1, the queen can go to h3. Not to mention that the knight on d6 is, at the end of this can always be captured. So
yeah, exactly. So black could take all the pawns with check and then go for the d6 knight.
Exactly. So would be a dangerous decision from white's point of view. So rook a1 was played instead, and knight f3 check still secures a draw. So if black wants to make a draw, can always bail out with knight f3 check, pawn f3, and queen g3. As I said, the queen will move to whichever side the king goes, and that should be enough to hold the game. So you always got to keep that in your back pocket. Say, I can make a draw, I know that. Now let's try to find something better. So is king g7 playing for bishop c8 ideas better? Not positive, but at least it's an option.
Yeah, I don't know what shall he do here.
It's a really tough choice. I mean, playing a move like knight d3 is also probably tempting because you're going getting a little bit active, trying to get after this e4 pawn, but at the same time you only have one piece available to attack this pawn on e4, so it's not enough firepower. And this bishop on b7 is such a bad piece.
Yeah, we should definitely do something about the bishop, but as you have pointed it out, bishop c8 is bad because of possibilities of rook a8 pinning that bishop. So maybe you are right. Maybe the best is to move the king away from the back rank and then try to improve the bishop.
Right.
If he has the time for it.
And that's a big if. But I think, maybe it's possible. Just play something like this, play solidly. And it looks like on as well the all-French battle has gotten underway between Marseille and the Cannes Blockbusters. So more games to look at if we need. Though I think sticking with the snowballs and the turtles makes a lot of sense considering the time situation. But I'm happy that you take me wherever you want to take us. I'm happy to follow your lead.
I think we should still stick to our main match for now, the snowballs and the turtles. And once the two French teams are past the opening phase, then we will also look at their games, of course, because we want to see the two French teams, good friends, now fighting against each other for advancing in the playoffs of the Pro Chess League.
Yep, and we especially Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is the top player that's playing today. I mean, can't go wrong watching his game. And speaking of can't go wrong watching a game, Georg Meyer's game, what is happening here? It looks like somehow Meyer ended up in a good position. So you were right.
That's it.
You were.
How many moves since I told you?
Yeah, not too many.
Just kidding, of course. But we just always see this by Georg. His excellent endgame skills always make him win these positions. It doesn't matter that it was very, very equal from the beginning.
Yeah, now he's up a clear pawn, but it's not an easy endgame to turn into a win. Meyer's clock is not great. Okay, he's very fast. It's not that complicated of a position, so he'll be able to work his way back up in the clock with a 2-second increment. But white is trying to clamp down on the queen side and challenge black and say, how are you going to create a passed pawn? On the king side, where the black has the extra pawn, the three pawns here are really not really creating a usable passed pawn anytime soon. Okay, now that looks good enough. Because you plant this pawn on a4, which limits this white rook, and now this rook is dominating the game. It attacks c3. It keeps the white king cut off along the fourth rank, and this is very, very bad for white now. Just very passive setup.
It is. So the black king is going to be activated, and the f4 pawn should fall very soon. This is a typical Georg Meyer game. Easy win.
Yes, now it's an easy win. The king comes to f6 and to f5, and you're right. I have to bow down. I admit when I make mistakes, but this is an easy Georg Meyer victory at this point. So we can keep an eye on the end of the game, but we'll come back here once something more happens. Right now, it's just over. And where else is interesting? So Luka Lenic is up 2 pieces now. Okay, that game is now 2 pieces ahead for Lenic. I'm confused. I don't. It looks like white was forced backwards, and after this, attack the queen, finally the capture happened, and yeah, that's, I don't know what knight takes b5 is. It's an admission of defeat, essentially.
It does look like that, yes. So this will be a win for the turtles. There's a draw agreed in that very interesting position between your favorite turtle and Kirill Alexeyenko. So he actually, after rook a1, went for knight f3 check, and then the perpetual with queen g3.
And a draw was indeed agreed here, and I'm trying to think if black somehow could have tried to play on. Here, not really. Once you sacrifice the piece, you're bound to capture these pawns, but I don't know, maybe king g7 was an idea to play on and try for more. But a good game from the black perspective, and making a very solid, straightforward draw with black against a strong grandmaster is definitely an achievement.
Yeah, certainly. So if he was aware of the team situation, then I think it was a smart choice, because the position was complex. Even if we liked black's position, it was not clear at all how the b7 bishop would have been a useful piece. If he saw that they were winning on the board of Luka Lanic, then actually it was a good team decision, I think.
Right. And actually, Evgeny Agrest's position looks good as well. It did not look great earlier in the game, but white went for this pawn sacrifice on move 26 by playing e3 to e4. It was not at all necessary, but it was indeed played. And it looks like white was attempting to make use of this rook on d1, staring at this knight on d7. Unfortunately, he changed his mind. And what black did was just set up a blockade along the f-file. And what you need is to play h3 and g4 in one turn, but h3 is met by h5, stopping this pawn move on g4. So that doesn't work out. And as we scroll forward here, black did well to defend this e-pawn, and is currently up the pawn. And here we sit with Agrest's knight on f4, bishop on f5, working pretty well together, though at the same time having opposite colored bishops should give white good chances to hold a position like this.
If this is a draw, then it leaves us with, well, Meyer's game, which we already declared as a victory for his nobles. So it could simply be a 2-2. Very exciting games, but leading to a tie in the first round.
And Meyer did win his game, so you are correct. What else can I say? You're right. I wasn't. I bow down. I respect you.
No, you also trust Meyer's skills. Simply the exchange French starts out in a boring way, but the stronger player usually wins.
Yeah, that is true. And the game that we have on screen here between Agrest and Sebenik, well, they're both Agrest is slightly higher rated, but with the white pieces, that advantage is offset, and it looks like they're repeating moves for the time being. If I'm Agrest, I'm trying to win this game. I want to figure out a way, maybe start with king f7 here, and then try to see how I can proceed, because I'm up a pawn, I'm up a minute on the clock. My opponent hasn't exactly shown the most precise play in recent moves, and so maybe there's a way to continue this game and challenge white to find the accurate continuations just to make a draw. Mm-hmm. King f7 played.
I wonder if our commissioner, Greg Shahade, can confirm what's going on in the other match, because I see Etienne Bacrot not making his first move for the moment. I don't think that he needs 4 minutes to decide what to play against d4, so I really wonder if he has some kind of a technical problem, or did he make it to the first round for the migraine?
That would give his team migraines by not showing up to the Pro Chess League playoffs. You put a 2,700 in the lineup, you expect him to go, at least 3.5 out of 4, and not forfeit a game in the first round. So, wow. Yeah,
we are not sure yet what's going on with the game of Mr. Bacrot, but I know that Greg knows everything, and he will soon inform us.
Yeah, I'm trying to just look at this game here. It's just very strange. But this game that we have still on screen between Agrest and Sebenik is coming down to the wire. Sebenik with 14 seconds, Agrest with 40 plus seconds. And I don't know, all of a sudden black has scooped up a second pawn, but that king on g6 is a bit open. The bishop is generally better in endgames with this, having a longer range. I don't like that last move. Maybe bishop d2 was better, putting this bishop here to support a rook. And now, okay, but now black's just up 2 pawns. I don't know, do you think Agrest will be able to convert this?
2 pawns. Yes.
Your reaction?
A pawn is a pawn, and I'm a pawn grabber myself. So this endgame, I think, is once again should be something that's easy for a grandmaster to win. And his pieces are also very nice. The king is more active. The knight is perfectly placed on g4. Now he's improving his rook as well. So I think he's going to win this game in a few moves.
And rook e6 was a nice technical move, protecting the a6 pawn just in case. And the rook is also behind the e pawn. So he's really backwards right now, which to me is a bit odd. But now knight d5 to f4 is potentially his plan. He needs to coordinate his pieces in a useful way. And okay, knight f4 check came. Now rook f6 maybe? Go for some kind of discovered checks.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like those tricks, but he goes rook c6, which is also nice, of course, heading toward the c3 square.
And g2 is the real pawn you want. You don't care about the e5 pawn. Well, you kind of care about it now, because your king might be in some trouble with...
Well, this was a bit surprising that he allowed bishop takes c5. He wants to defend his king by going back to e6 with the knight. Both players down to seconds.
Yeah, this white king is very close. Rook a7 here, or rook d6, bring your king into d5 or f5. The black king's not so happy here.
I don't think that black played it perfectly the last couple of moves. So we were saying, at least I was saying, that he would win very easily. And this is not what we are seeing. We are seeing now a repetition of moves.
Wow.
Draw.
Okay, it's a draw. So we saw that in the game between Luka Lenic. He won his game, Georg Meyer won. So the 1 versus 4 matchups went well for the 1 seeds. 2 and 3 were draws. So interesting matches to begin the round here. And let's...
Wow. Well, this was a missed chance for the snowballs. 2 pawns up for Agrest. And there was no need to give up the e5 pawn.
No,
At least it didn't seem to be forced to me that you would give up and then your king would be worse.
There was certainly no need, but unfortunately for Agrest, in time trouble, he didn't handle the position as well as he could have, and so he only gets a half point out of that game, which looked like a pretty well-played game on his part. His opponent got greedy. Not greedy. His opponent tried to get more and tried to make an equal position into a winning one, and unfortunately it almost backfired. So a good save by Semenuk, especially because he was in time trouble, but a good showing by Agrest with the black pieces. So,
shall we go for the Frenchman with 3 names?
We shall. So Bacro did finally make some moves. That is nice to see.
All right,
that he's
that's
not
great.
forfeiting.
That's good news for every migraine fan, and not so good news for the fans of Valentina. Or it's actually good news too, because now we can see Valentina crushing Etienne.
Ah, I see. I see. Look at you. You have faith in Gunina. She is very strong, so I don't blame you at all.
She is.
But right now,
she's a very nice girl. I like Valentina, so I'm of course rooting for her. I'm always rooting for fellow lady players.
It was recently International Women's Day. I didn't actually, say Happy International Women's Day. So happy belated International Women's Day, Anna.
Thank you, Robert. That's so nice of you.
Of course, I'm a huge supporter of yours and women's chess and everybody. So happy to see Gunina playing in this league. We definitely want to see more women playing in the Pro Chess League. And so why don't we, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is up 2 pawns here. They're kind of ugly pawns in the sense that they're doubled on the A file, but it's nice to have outside pawns in endgames, because in order for the white king to get involved, it has to be distracted to the side of the board. And in the meantime, the black king can think about coming to the F3 square, which is newly vacated with the pawn moving from G2 to G3. Yeah, I don't know. Looking, and yes, Squatchy, I see you in the the twitch.tv/Pro Chess League chat. I do have coached the U.S. women's chess team, so always supportive in that regard as well. But here,
Robert is doing a great job improving women's chess and making more girls get into chess. I see Alexandra in the chat. Shout out to Alexandra. You have done an amazing job commentating with Danny on the Eastern division of the playoffs. And what a thrilling last round between the 2 Indian teams.
Oh, yeah. As I was eating chicken tikka masala, I was watching very
intently.
intently.
Robert was so much in theme, and now we are in theme for our commentary. Robert, let's just show the t-shirt once again.
All right, if I have to. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So hopefully everyone can see my shirt. I'm awkwardly leaning back here, but this is for the Ljubljana Turtles. Even though I'm not necessarily rooting for them, I do love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But we have a blockbuster on our hands between Cannes and the Migraines. So sort of opposing effects here. We have a looking for a movie finish, and we have Migraines giving us headaches. So very different team names. And which one of these 4 games? So I have the MVL game up, but he's up 2 pawns, and now he can go A4 and then bring his rook to A5. And once you get the rook behind the passed pawns, you're really in the driver's seat. I don't know. Should we stay with MVL in this rook endgame, or are there any other better options, more exciting positions that we can switch over to?
I think this one we can claim that the Frenchman with 3 names will win it. He's a very strong player, the strongest in today's playoffs that we are covering. So let's move on and see board 2 of the Migraines versus board 3 of the Blockbusters.
Okay, board 3 of the Blockbusters, board 2, that is Gunina. And it's early in the moves of the game because Bacro, as I see here, spent 5 minutes and 5 seconds on his first move, which just meant that he was not at the board. And here we have a position, Anna, that to me looks perfectly nice from White's point of view, but also very solid from Black. So I think that it's probably about level. Though, what do you make of White's chances to try to play for a little bit more?
She's such a great attacking player, and she never really wants to go for boring positions. So I think that she will try to spice it up, even though her opponent is a 2700 Grandmaster.
How is she going to spice it up, though? I guess, it's one of those positions where if you try too hard to win, you also might be trying hard to lose. Because, for example, playing a move like E4, you get your knight into the center very quickly, but at the same time, you're left with this isolated d-pawn, and those are not fun to play with. Anna, I heard you earlier telling me that you don't
no, that's not for me. Positional weakness, no, please, no. I'm not a fan of that, but she's clearly trying to prepare E4. Probably also she will push F3 and then E4. If you can get your F pawn to E4, that would be a nice center, but it's not so easy to actually get that pawn push with the D4 pawn becoming weak. Now the G7 bishop already targeting that pawn. So I think Black is okay here. The question is this possible for White to do something? You see, she's going for it. She cannot just sit back and offer a draw.
Yeah. No, I mean, and also this is thematic in many regards, playing for the E4 move.
Yeah, of course. So she's doing everything as it's in the textbooks. I think that Valentina herself said in an interview that basically all her games are crazy. So we should come back later and see the madness on the board.
And yeah, I just want to point out one thing before I switch over to the next game. Is E4 would have been too soon because you have to make sure your D4 is well defended. So if you play E4, you're simply losing this D4 pawn as queen and bishop team up on that square. So just don't blunder there and keep playing good moves, Valentina, and we'll come back to you. So MVL is about to win. He's gotten his pawn all the way down the board. And in fact, White has not a single useful move, and it's Zugzwang. Because White would love it.
Nice. This is really nice. The finishing. Photo finish for Black. Nice. Very nicely played by MVL.
Yeah, and now the king just follows suit, right? King c4, after king c2, and whichever way this king moves, you go the opposite way. So king d2, you run to b3. If king b2, you run to d3. And once your king comes over to e2, you're going for this f2 pawn. You're getting at the base of the pawn chain.
Yeah, so I believe that White is going to resign next move, probably, or one more move, and then he resigns.
Yep, and resignation occurred. So that was even easier. Instead of going for the opposition, just went the king protecting the pawn, using the rook to battle the enemy rook, and that is an easily winning position. So resignation occurs 1-0 in favor of the Migraines. So,
very nicely played by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who is not only the strongest player in today's playoff in our division, but he's also the captain of the Migraines. So a captain player taking the Pro Chess League very seriously.
Yep. And I have to do you a favor here, Anna. You've done me a great service by just giving excellent commentary and just being the best. So I'm going to have to go over to Marc-Andrea Maurizi's position because you're going to be very happy with how it looks right now. You're going to be very, very happy to see the youngster in a very equal ending. And Robert Fontaine...
Nice! He's doing so well! Our 11-year-old star, Marc-Andrea Maurizi. I'm rooting for you, Mark, in every game of yours.
And he just offered a draw, and Robert Fontaine declined immediately. And I understand why. I think
wow!
Black
You've got the guts to offer a draw to a grandmaster who is 500 points over him. That's confidence.
Yeah.
I love how cheeky nowadays all the kids are. They have no respect for your rating or your title. They don't care.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I tell my students that rating is actually just a number and it shows your past performance, not your present or future performance. So, you know, in any one game, a 2100 could play like a 2500. They just might happen to play like a, 1700 the following game, and that's why they're 2100. But here, I don't think I love Black's decision after pawn takes g5. Maybe you should take with the f-pawn, just hoping that you can create an outside pass pawn at some point, just mixing things up. I understand that Fontaine doesn't want to give up control of this e5 square, as the white knight can jump in through f3 to e5. But this is the way to mix it up, get an asymmetrical pawn structure. Instead, you see in the game, well, I mean, this just looks pretty level, if you ask me.
I agree with you, and I was worried about Fontaine because the Blockbusters, they have so many strong players themselves. Cornat is not playing today, and Lagarde is not playing today. You mentioned it to me when we were preparing for the show that they are both at the Reykjavik Open. So the Blockbusters are missing two of their top players, while Fontaine, who is, of course, 2500 Grandmaster, normally a very strong player, but he has been struggling in the Pro Chess League. He has scored, if I'm correct, 2.5 out of 12 games.
Oof.
Which is a very bad performance, about 2300 rating performance. For a Grandmaster, that's just too low.
Yeah, you can't afford that, especially against a team like the Migraines where they have the firepower on the top 3 boards. In fact, all 3 of the top Grandmasters for the Migraines are higher rated than board number 1 for Cannes. So not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy, but I think they trust their board 4 so much. It's difficult to have an almost 2500 on board 4.
Yeah, that's a big matchup problem for a lot of teams when you play a strong international master, 24 plus rated player on the last board, which means that they can upset your grandmasters and are very likely to defeat your lower rated board 4 themselves. So
exactly.
As Maritzi will keep an eye on you, stop getting low on time. That's the one piece of advice.
Don't do that. Oh my, I'm gonna have a heart attack. I didn't realize the clock situation. 40 seconds for my little boy. Mark, you should make a move.
Yeah, you really have to start moving here because, I mean, already gross time trouble and 33 and counting down. I was going to switch games, and then I realized I can't do that with the time as this. And look at this move, bishop h7. The idea is this bishop is trying to come to g8 with check and attack the d5 square. So I really like that decision.
Love it.
And how does Black keep that d5 pawn defended? You might have to move your knight away from the d6 square, but if you move the knight from d6, you're losing control over the center. So this is a great move, bishop h7. It was worth the 57 seconds he spent finding it because bishop g8 check now is a pretty nasty threat.
Yes, king f7 preventing bishop g8, but now it means that the king is less active on f7. Black might want to come back to e6, but I think that Mark is ready to repeat moves with bishop h7, once again threatening bishop g8.
Yeah, because Black's only chance is to play a move like f5 and try to gain some space, but right now that's not happening. And if c takes d4, c takes d4, move like knight e6, well, you can attack my pawn on d4, but your pawn on d5 is always hanging. So really just interesting position.
Yeah, apparently there's some craziness going on in Valentina's game, which we could expect. We announced it.
What is happening here? Okay, so let's see. This rook went to the a file, so a3 was played. You can't go b3 because after b3, the knight would have jumped to the b2 square, forking queen and rook. So that was the big threat. So it takes, moving backwards, and now knight e3 and queen c1, hitting rook and knight. So knight e3 would look like a nice fork on the queen and rook, but unfortunately, it ran into this. But king f1, what a concept! Isn't Bacro just, he has to be doing well here, right?
I would think so. I'm trying to understand. This is very deep. Well, king f1, I guess she didn't want to play king h1 because that was looking very suspicious for white. But now black is a pawn up. The position is far from clear because the d1 knight, that's not where you normally have your knights. It's either going to be really cool or you might get into trouble because of that knight. Yeah,
the knight is, it's sort of promoted itself to the other side of the board. So,
I love that. I love that.
Oh, I like this move. Queen b3 is great. You're attacking the knight on d1, but you're really threatening is knight d6. So if this knight tries to escape, knight d6 hits the rook on e8, the pawn on b7, and the pawn over here on f7 as well. So that could be a dagger.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. She's really, really a great attacking player, as mentioned. And for her, these tactical motives are like child's play. So it doesn't matter that it's the 2700 Grandmaster, her opponent.
This is a terrible move, I think, because now knight d6. And if you take my rook on e2, I take back. You have to defend your knight with knight c3 check. And now I bring my king to d3, where I threaten queen f7 check, or queen takes b7 check, and your bishop on d4 is also directly under target. So wow, this is not looking good for Bacrot here.
Now that's an active king that you have just created, Robert.
I mean, the king...
With queens on the board, the king marching to d3. I love it.
I am not scared at all. So I'm ready to get that king marching forward. And Distant Fires is putting some emotes and saying, loves this king move coming to the center. But actually, this game has a lot of time left. So let's go back to the Maurizi game. It was 3 seconds left, 5 seconds left. I'm sorry, Anna, but he's making me nervous. But he's doing an extremely good job here. This knight is coming to c8 now after the king goes to b7. Or if the king goes to d6, the knight still goes back to c8. So you can also play knight back to b5, offering the trade. But look at this maneuver, knight to c8. Now knight d6 check. Well, actually, then the king comes to c6. So maybe knight d6 check doesn't do what it needs to do. But bishop d7 here, attack the knight. Okay, bishop g6, played with 2 seconds left.
Goodness me, Mark, you should hurry up.
Okay, so traded the knights. And now the king is strong in the center. And now you can make a move like, okay, he's not going to move his pawns. I would say you can make a move like c4, offering an exchange of everything there. But instead, he's keeping his pawn steady. And I think that's a good strategy. Just threaten the knight, keep your bishop stuck. There's no way to attack these pawns, at least not in an easy way, because this knight on e7 is sort of, okay.
He's constantly making his moves with 1 or 2 seconds on the clock, and g4, I'm not sure I'm a fan of creating this f4 square potentially for the black knight.
What?
And he won on time, no!
I feel like this happens to Maurizi all the time. He has these decent positions, and either he gets in time trouble and blunders them away, or he just flags. And in this case, that is, I mean, that's so upsetting. I'm sorry, Anna. I mean, you know, if I could pass, I have tissues over there. If I could pass them through the stream, I would. But unfortunately, it's a loss for Maurizi. So we have 2 games left in this match between Gazzoli and I can't even Libzewski. We haven't even checked that game out, but Gazzoli with the white pieces is down in exchange, though he does have the same amount of pawns. I thought it looks like white's up material, pawns, because there's a nice pawn on d5, but black also has the same amount of pawns over there. This is just great for black. Just the king's running to, this is a very smart play by Fabian. He's moving his king over the queen side, and then is going to figure out how to break on the queen side. Sorry, the king side. I'm switching my flanks. So the queen side stays closed. The king side is about to be forced open, and now he can maneuver his pieces as he wishes. So knight here. You have to be careful, though. Queen c3 to a3 at some point could be annoying as well. How is Gunina doing? She's still... So I think there's more time in that game. How does that game have so much more time than this one?
They started later because there was some technical issue. Remember that we thought that Bacrot was going to not make it to the game. I think they started their game later. Okay, well this game, I don't want to stay here because I want to get to the Gunina game. And everything seems a little bit tied down at the moment with white aiming for the c-pawn. So black should just move the king back and forth and then figure out what to do later. She has just sacrificed an exchange. Yeah, that's why I wanted to get here. So, went way back in the game. Knight d6, whoa. Knight e3 check, take that. Rook takes, queen f7 check. This king cannot even go to h6 because then bishop f4 check is deadly. And so king h8, now bishop f4. A brave decision by Gunina, and an essential point here is that rook e7 doesn't actually threaten the queen on f7 because knight takes f7 is check, forking queen and king. And so bishop g5 would be an incredibly strong move to meet against rook e7. And you pin this rook to the queen, winning the rook. And queen takes d6. While it might try to save the day, runs into queen f8, checkmate in 1. So, wow. Bishop f4, what a concept, hitting this rook on I
e3.
love it. And this is what she does all the time. So It doesn't matter that this all started out at the Queen's Gambit declined with a very classical and traditional position. She always finds a way to mess it up and to go for some tactical craziness.
Yeah, this is just unreal. I mean, right now, this position, it's so close to checkmate on her, but it's not quite there because this bishop on d4 is a great defender. Now, what white needs to do is, I'm going to highlight this queen here on f7. It needs the knight to get to f7. So somehow, some way, Gunina needs to get this knight to f7 with a deadly check. Now, the real problem for Bacrot is he's down 3 minutes right now. And more than 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes and counting down. But it's hard to even make a move. The queen cannot leave the back rank, because if the queen leaves the back rank, the white queen will deliver a checkmate. As I mentioned, the rook e7 runs right into bishop g5 with a pin. And importantly, as I was mentioning while showing the board, rook takes f7 isn't actually a threat because you fork the queen and the king with a check, and you actually go up a piece. So what move can even be played here?
I don't know. He's going for rook e7, but as you have mentioned, that does not threaten the queen. Shout out to everyone watching on Twitch and on Chess.com. I believe that now we are also on the front page of Twitch. Ooh. Hello to our new viewers. This is the Pro Chess League. This is the playoffs, the strongest chess team competition online. This is Chess.com and Twitch coming together to bring to you this amazing league where the top chess players fight against each other in a knockout system in this playoff.
Wow, and welcome everybody from Twitch. We're in the middle of a very exciting battle here. 2 of them between the Migraines and the Cannes Blockbusters. And in fact, this other game I have to switch here very quickly because Black has 1 second left. Made that move with 1.9 left, Anna. And look at Black's position. The knight on d3 is attacking multiple pawns in the center. Now the g6 pawn is falling. But you have to be careful about taking that g6 pawn because after queen g6, maybe there's some sort of rook g8 hitting the bishop on g3 as well. So it's getting very complicated here. And Libuszewski does not have a lot of time to calculate as he puts his knight back on d7, and only white can be better here, I feel like. The knight on d3 is such a powerful piece. The black king is stuck in the corner. And so between these 2 games, I'm not sure who is going to get the upper hand in this match. This one is coming down to the wire, and I'm going to switch back to the Gunina game just because it looks like...
that's just such an exciting game. Now the exchange is gone. Bacrot had to give it back after bishop g5.
And importantly, the queen on d6 now covers the f8 square because queen f8 would be checkmate, but this queen saves the day. So, I mean, right now, Black isn't threatening queen g3 check. I thought that you're threatening queen g3 to scoop up his bishop, but let's say I make a random move like pawn a3 just to show everybody. Once this queen captures on g5, there still is checkmate on the back rank. So you have to be careful about that. This is getting complicated.
So this is actually a pawn up for Bacrot, who had an exchange up previously. Yep. But the white queen and the bishop on g5 are so well positioned, and this king on h8 is not feeling comfortable.
Yeah, I'm going back to the other game just because of the time situation. It looks like Gazzoli is breaking through. His knight ended up capturing this pawn on c5. He traded queens on this e6 square. The black queen is overmatched by its enemy on e6, and so the trade, and now knight on c5, take on e5, and unfortunately, if you do a material count, well, actually, this g-pawn is starting to roll a little bit, but the white king is too close. This black king is stuck in the corner. This should be a very easy victory. Now knight c7 check will decide matters.
Wow, a check and then wins the rook with a check. So black takes on e7, but this is already just last attempt to bail out. I don't think he has a way to bail out from this position.
Because the bishop just can cover this important g1 queening square, and that should end the game on the spot. So, yep, take g3, and now the game is over. So this game is won by Yannick Gazzoli, who's had a phenomenal season for the Migraines. And what is that? Knight f4 check. There's no stalemate. The king has the b8 square. Now, if that b8 square was covered, what Black's idea was to play a move like get a queen, and after takes...
Maybe that was just the last try in case White has pre-moved something. But no, you can't pre-move with a check, so I don't know. What was that?
It was desperation. But okay, so Gunina is still fighting. I don't really think she's in any danger of losing. Her queen on f7 is just so strong, and there are these checkmate threats in the f8 square. So... wow, just, really good game by Gunina thus far. So hopefully for her sake, she doesn't blunder anything because it seems like she should not be in any danger of losing.
Yeah, she should not, I believe. Just to respond, too short. Magnus Carlsen's team unfortunately did not make it to the playoffs. Neither the Chess Bros. I see Eric is joining us now. Eric, you have done an amazing job on the candidates. And those of you asking whether this is a coincidence that today there's no candidate, there's no such thing as coincidence.
So there's no such thing as free lunch, and there's no such thing as coincidence, I guess. And
yeah, that's a rule. So unfortunately, no Norway Gnomes in the playoffs, no Chess Bros. We are heartbroken, but we have other teams such as the Marseille Migraines led by MVL, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, the strongest French player and top 10 elite grandmaster.
Yeah, I'm putting MVL on screen. After him, Bacro. The Migraines have such a strong top three between MVL, Bacro, and Gazzoli. But Gunina, she's doing well against Bacro in this one, and hopefully can salvage this at least a half point for her team. So now check on the back rank, Queen G8. The problem for black is that you end up being very passive. So Queen D7 here, but then Queen C4 check. Actually, all of a sudden, maybe black is gaining a little bit of important space, and still not clear. I still think white should be able to hold this, especially with the clock situation. But Queen C4 check does deliver an important check, but protects the bishop on D4. And then maybe this king will eventually find its way out of the corner. Because nobody puts baby in a corner, and nobody puts Bacro's king in the corner.
So true. He's running low, really low on the clock, 16 seconds for Etienne Bacro. And Valentina's still over 2 minutes. So I like that she's keeping her cool and keeps this time advantage.
Yeah, 2 minutes and 9 seconds, and compared to 16 seconds, huge advantage on the clock. But all of a sudden, black's position does look better and better. Queen takes b7, of course, is a good choice. You take one of the extra pawns off the board, and if black isn't careful and doesn't capture your pawn a2, you may even consider trying to make a queen. But if queen takes a2 now, white can always follow suit with queen takes c6. So it would be a pawn trade. And this should be, they can even agree on a draw here, I feel like, because queen takes c6 will be met by queen f7. Black's king is not in enough danger to warrant this game going on too much longer, but maybe it's worth a bit of an effort. Ooh, queen f7 would be a huge blunder, Anna. That's what she was hoping for in Bacro's time trouble, just to show
How
everybody.
Tricky. This is Valya. Valya, typical Valya.
Because if the king takes on h6, you lose your queen. If the king goes back, I checkmate you along the back rank. Your queen only has the f8 square, but my bishop covers. So let's get to the live game, and I can, of course, show a replay on that later. But as soon as I said you should not be worried from black's point of view, there was immediately this nasty threat looming. Wow. Just wow. I mean, okay, so still 7 seconds left. Move h5 gives black the square for h7 for the king, which now you don't have to worry about the back rank check. Okay, now they're trading bishops, and this is should be draw agreed. So big round there for the Migraines. With this draw, they'll go up 2.5 to 1.5. They do have the draw odds because they are the higher ranked team, which means if it's an 8-8 tie, the Migraines move on. So not only do the Blockbusters need to fight back, but they need to actually climb ahead. There's no such thing as draws for them as a team.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's very important in the knockout stage that there's always a team that moves forward. And here, as you have mentioned, the Migraines have the draw odds. Imagine that our poor little boy, Mark Maurizi, would not have lost on time. That would have meant an even bigger advantage for the Migraines in the first round.
Yeah, unfortunately, he let his clock tick too low, and when there only zeros remained, he had to call it a day. But he still has 3 rounds left. He's playing well. That's a good sign for the Migraines, but you can't let that happen for sure. And I switch over to the Georg Meyer game for the board one for the Stockholm Snowballs. I almost just called them the Swedish Meatballs by accident. But the board one for the Snowballs with the white pieces, he is trying to make use of the fact that this pawn on e4 is a bit overextended. So if he can remove the guard, that is, get rid of this knight on f6, then he can capture the pawn on e4. Now, a move ago, he could have considered taking on f6, but this is not really a winning attempt, because in these sort of opposite color bishop endings, you may be up a pawn for white, but that pawn's not getting anywhere, and this would be a pretty straightforward draw, because technically speaking, you can't attack this pawn on c5, as the bishop will always be able to defend it either from the behind or in front, and just it's a very easy draw. So e3 was played. And do we have Oh, we have more interesting games. Actually, I'm going to switch this up to Marcus Orndal with the black pieces about to lose to Borshek. And now it's time to show off the shirt. Ninja Turtles, the Ljubljana Turtles are playing. And this is Borshek on the Turtles, and he is about to win a knight on f8. And he, in fact, wins the game as Donatello.
Just happened. So Donatello wins the game, 2 out of 2 for your favorite Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, my favorite Ninja Turtle. He's Donatello. He wins this one on the back rank, not to mention his pawn can't be stopped on the B file. So an important win. He was playing the lowest board for Stockholm, but you still need to get all the points you can. Board 4s may be lower rated, but they're not easy. And
that's very true.
Evgeny Agrest with the white pieces is worse in his endgame. That's not good for Stockholm at all. Look at board 4s. Luka Skuhala, and he is about to win this h5 pawn by going king h6 and taking it. And I mean, I don't know about you, Anna, but I'm very concerned about Agrest's endgame here.
I am concerned as well, and we saw him dropping half a point in his previous game with 2 pawns up. Now he might not get lucky in this game and save it.
Yeah.
So, well, actually, yeah, he would be like unlucky in 2 games.
Yeah,
but does it count as unluck when you are verse and you lose it? No, that doesn't count as unluck.
No.
I'm trying to make sense of this, but no, it's just a spoiled half a point from the previous game, and his opponent might not spoil it.
Yeah, this is very bad. The rook on a7 is passive, so people might think, oh, that's not a good rook. It's only defending. It's defending a5, but it's also defending f7, which is essential. Now king g6 is played, and so with this rook on a7, protecting everything, now the rook can even consider sliding out rook c7 with the idea of coming to c2 or coming to c4 and hitting the d4 pawn. So black is the one who is certainly playing for win up a pawn, and I think this h-pawn will be used as a decoy in the near future to help secure a full point. Though Agrest is not completely out of it yet, he does have significant drawing chances, but I'm loving Luka Skuhala's game here.
Very nicely done, and I think he has done very well too in the first stage of the Pro Chess League. So all these board 4s with low rating, well, they are dangerous guys and fearless.
Certainly fearless and playing very well. So we actually have so many streamers in the chat. I see Ben Feingold's in there.
Shout out to Ben as well, and we still have Eric with us. Eric, what's your take on today's matches? Who do you see moving forward?
Yeah, we'll wait to hear from that's Eric Hansen of the Chess Bros doing the daily coverage of the candidates. He and Yasser Serwan, the one and only Grandmaster Yasser Serwan, have been covering the event, and they have been doing an amazing job. So everyone should be watching the Chess Bros on their channel on Twitch throughout the candidates.
They should, and they should also watch the game highlight. Kramnik's brilliant game analyzed by the one and only Grandmaster Robert Hess. It's on the YouTube channel of Chess.com. I love the video. That was part of my preparation for today. So everyone should check it out. It's a masterpiece. Game of the century candidate for sure. Analyzed by my dear Robert Hess. Let's just show once again the t-shirt to add to this hype.
I'll have to wait till the turtles start doing better.
I'm pointing in the wrong direction, by the way. Robert!
It's okay. It's okay. I know where you're trying to point. But I
never know in which direction is it.
You know, I'm ready to kick Danny out of our commentary team so we can do more commentary streams together. You're so supportive and obviously a great co-commentator, so I'm having a great time. So which game should we take a peek at?
Robert. We are almost hitting 8,000 now, so shout out to everyone on Twitch joining us once again. This is the Pro Chess League. This is the playoffs of the top chess team competition online.
Yep. And 8,000 viewers is a great number. So thank you, Twitch, for hosting us, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I have Georg Meyer's game open here because it looks dull. It's an end game. It looks dry. But again, this e4 pawn is a weakness. It's an absolute liability from Black's perspective. And so Georg needs to figure out his timing. If his king could go to b2 right now, then he could consider putting pressure on this e4 pawn because his b3 pawn would be defended. However, if his king goes to the other side of the board, then he has to be concerned about his f2 pawn, the base of the pawn chain. So it's not that easy for the king to run west. And also this idea of trading bishops is something to keep in mind as well.
Eric is testing our memory, and I will rely on you, Robert. Eric is picking the team that they could not handle last year. Now I'm trying to recall the whole bracket.
Who Montreal couldn't handle? Didn't they?
Yes, the round that the Chess Bras were knocked out. It was very close to the the semis, I think. But who was the opponent?
I don't recall, honestly. I know they beat
Eric, you are a naughty boy.
They beat the Montclair Sopranos, and I was on that team. And in fact, I played Eric, and we had a very interesting draw. So I know they beat us. I don't know who beat them. But speaking of beating,
I would say the Migraines. Was that the Migraines? But I don't remember for sure.
Whoa. Anna, I just pulled up the Luka Lenish-Alexienko game. And I'm very fascinated by this last move. Black went rook c3, just putting pressure on the d3 and b3 squares. And white went knight b5. And at first I'm like, well, can't you just take a free piece on b5? There's nothing protecting it. But the rooks are open facing each other on the a file. And so if rook takes a1 and you take back on a1, say with the knight, you also protect this knight on b5 and you save your piece. But I was going to say is you can just take on c3 as well and protect your rook this way. So there are two options for white not to lose materials. The knight on b5, and we see some trade. Rook takes b3, take n8, and rook takes
Wow,
f8.
this is a really long tactical sequence that both players must have calculated, of course.
Yeah, look at that move at the end there with queen takes b1, defending the knight on b5.
Nice.
So a beautiful
Nicely done.
sequence.
This is Grandmaster level of tactical vision.
Yeah, that is very high level. And now this knight on b5 actually is a little bit stuck. So you would love to be able to move it, but all squares are occupied. So knight a7, well, your knight's not really getting out of there. So knight a7 might run into an idea like queen a4, hitting both pieces at the same time. So this is still not so easy. Maybe queen a1, another tactical shot. Idea being there's bishop f8 check if you take my knight on a7. So these, there are tactics galore in their position here. And he did go knight a7. So we'll see if he follows up queen a4 with a move like queen to a1. Wow, just wow.
Eric has responded to us, and I think this must have been a first in a lifetime for him that he explained a comment on Twitch that he has made. Thank you, Eric, for being so kind. He was just basically pointing out that this season the Chess Bros didn't do very well against the new teams, so that's why he was rooting for the old teams.
Yep. And
yeah, it's a very strong second year for the Pro Chess League. Last year, the inaugural season was strong, but this year it has become the top team competition. Like every team is so strong.
No, teams are getting stronger. The top players are kind of flocking to the league. You have Vishy Anand, who played earlier today for the Mumbai Movers. He and the other Indian grandmasters above 2,700, all in the league. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, whose game we will get to shortly after this round of Stockholm and Ljubljana is over. And so what just happened here? So he gave
I was
up
wondering
the piece.
what's going on. Isn't it like black is in trouble? But yeah, it's a piece.
So I was mentioning queen a1 just to defend the knight on a7 through the bishop on a3, and that way you can play bishop b2. But maybe that knight still remains trapped. So instead, he went for queen b4 and went for some checks. But what if this, yeah, king sits on...
I don't get it. What is this? What's the concept?
It doesn't look great, honestly. But I guess the idea is if pawn takes d4, there's some e5, and e5 not only threatens e6, but queen f6 check, removing the guard of this knight on f7 with check. So you have to be careful right now. So what can black do? Can black ignore it and play a move? I was thinking a move like queen to a4, but then still pawn takes e5. But actually, okay, so he took. So now e5.
I still don't get it. I still don't get this sacrifice.
I don't think it was ideal. Knight takes e5. Nice move. Trying to say the queen is overloaded. If it takes the knight on e5, it removes itself from the defense of the bishop on a3. And queen d6 check. Can the king go to f5 now? I don't see why not. That's a safe square. You know, it's strange. You tend not to want to bring your king up into the middle of the board with queens on, but king f5, there's only one queen there, and the king can eventually try to find its way to...
Oh, there's no time.
Oh, 2 seconds. I wasn't even looking.
He had 0.8 seconds when he made his move.
Wow.
0.8.
I wasn't even looking. 2.8 left. Normally I get all excited when there's no time, and I just wasn't looking at the clock. So between this game and the Georg Minor game, which is no time on the clock, things are really heating up in this round. And also the Evgeny Agres ending, where he should be going down. So this game looks, I mean, playing with 3.4 seconds and down a piece is not looking good, though there are some counter chances if this queen and bishop can team up together on this diagonal, because that's a very dangerous positioning of that black king. And now look at the time here, 18 seconds for black. I really want to switch the other games, but not when there's so little time remaining. And now just move queen back, queen d2, trying to get after this bishop on d7. Now queen d8. You got to get active. You can't play these sort of passive-looking moves. In fact, he wants to take on e5, but he can't because mate is happening.
This is just over now. Black is active and black is a piece up. He still has to figure out just to prevent all sorts of possible tricks. Well, now after queen f5, once again, there are tricks.
Take on f3. You win the queen. There it is. Knight f3. He won the queen. So game over. Put your queen.
Nice. So just the last move, when I was pointing out that finally white is active, that was a blunder.
Too active for his own good, but there is an endgame between...
Queen blunder by Luka Lanic and by Anna on screen. So well done.
I hope people clip that moment so that, you know...
I blunder like a GM.
Yeah, you know I love you, but it will be funny to see that clip later. But
of course, we live for those moments. So guys, we definitely request that whatever funny moment you find during the stream, please clip it, because those videos are the best. Who wants to watch afterwards some 3 hours of replay? You just want to see a 10-second summary.
Well, speaking of 10 seconds, well, I guess there's 20 seconds with Skuhala, but he's up a full rook, and he's about to beat Evgeny Agres in this game. So that is a humongous win for the Turtles, who will jump ahead to a 4.5, 3.5 lead after 2 full rounds of the Pro Chess League playoffs here. So that will, wow. And they were expected to go down 9-7 to Stockholm. Right now they're up 4.5, 3.5. What a win. Skuhala is going to be the hero that the Turtles need if they go on to salvage this match here and win. Here's the photo of Skuhala, who looks quite young himself on the Turtles. He is only 19 years old. Oh, okay. Well, he looks like he's like 14 in that photo. So maybe it's an old one. I don't know.
It's an old picture, but their team is really young too. I mean, the board fours in most of the teams are very young, and we have just seen 20-year-old Kirill Alexeyenko beating Luka Lanic. But what a round, and how exciting this match is for the Snowballs, who were supposed to be the clear favorite. It's not an easy road to the playoff advancing.
Oh, absolutely not. And I actually pulled up the French battle between the Blockbusters and the Migraines, and a lot of people have asked previously, do you prefer Anna or Anna? How do you pronounce your own name?
Me, in English, I usually say Anna, but Spanish people call me Anna.
Exactly.
So depending on in which language you talk to me.
So I'm speaking to you in English, but I still like Anna. No, Anna, it is. But for the chess here, it looks like your buddy Maurizi not looking good. His opponent has 2 rooks.
Mark, what happened to you?
Poor Maurizi. His bishop on f8 is lost in a second here after ideas with bishop coming to c5.
Oh, he started so well. He almost drew the top board of the Blockbusters, but now there's just no way that he can survive this.
No, this is
a cruel game. It's a cruel game.
Yeah, it's life. You know, e6 now is a good move, threatening to distract the knight, to take the knight and play a move like e7. So, for example, pawn takes f4, rook takes g6 check. You remove the guard and play e7 because the bishop can't take on e7 with the rook on d8 pinning, and that is what you, as Danny Wrench would say, or Walt Clyde Frazier for any Knicks fans out there, pinning and winning. Right here.
Speaking of Danny Wrench, I see the chat telling me that he calls you Bobby. Do you prefer Bobby or Robert? I did not ask you.
Nobody ever calls me Bobby except for Danny and other chess people.
Right.
But it's fine.
I think that's the answer.
I embrace it now. You know, it's fine. People call me Hess. They call me Robert. They call me Rob. They call me Bobby. As long as there's no Bob, then it's fine. You know, Danny will say Bob's your uncle as a joke, but otherwise it's you know, Robert, Rob, whatever.
I like Robert. I think it's a nice name.
Oh, thank you. Well, speaking of Robert, should we get to Robert Fontaine, since you like the name?
Sure. Let's go and see how he's doing after a quite a lucky win against the lowest rated player of the Migraines, poor 11-year-old Mark Morizzi.
Yep. And Gazzoli with the black pieces. Look at the ratings here. 25.92 black, 25.58 white. So a pretty level matchup on paper. Slightly stronger grandmaster with the black pieces. And Anna, there's an idea, generally speaking, to go knight d2 and bring your knight to c4. Thematic. But knight d2 has a huge drawback. And the reason is rook takes e3 check, king takes e3, and bishop h6 check, hitting this knight on d2 with 2 pieces. The king will have to move, and then black gets a second minor piece for the rook, which is more than enough compensation here. In fact, it's just better by points, but also just dominating in the current position. So don't blunder is essentially the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, it's a good advice. Just don't blunder.
Never
and don't
ever
lose some
blunder.
time, and you're gonna be fine.
And now there goes the twitch.tv/pro chess league chat. Firstly, 8,600 viewers here, 8,600. That's
Wow,
great.
shout out to everyone joining us once again on Twitch. We are on the front page of Twitch, and that's thanks to Chess.com and Twitch collaborating to bring to you the top chess league online, the Pro Chess League. That's what you are watching, where the finals will be held in San Francisco. And my dear colleague Robert Hess will be the on-site commentator with Danny Rensch and Alexandra Boltes.
You're absolutely right. And I just want to give a shout out to ChessBay94, and everyone is calling her Hespay right now. And so she is, she always, whenever I stream, she says she's going to change her name to Hespay. And then people are telling me, can my first name start with a C? For all of you wondering, both of my parents have first names that start with C. So yes, I was born to chess and chess. So, you know.
Wow, I love it.
It's what my college application essay was about, you know, fate in chess. Yes, it was a long time ago, but that's what it was about. But chess, chess. Should we look at your girl, Valentina Gunina, as she plays against?
Yes, certainly. Let's go, Valya.
Whoa, what is going on here? So is white, nope, and white's not up a pawn. At first glance, it looks like white is up a pawn. I don't know, I think it's something about advanced pawns make me think that someone's up a pawn. You know, these pawns on e5 and g5 are looking very nice there. But black is gaining some quick counterplay. And the big problem for white is this f4 pawn. The g5 and e5 pawns are well supported, but the f4 pawn doesn't have any pawns protecting it in return. So, I don't know. What are you thinking?
I usually like having the pair of bishops, but I also think that this e6 knight is well positioned and black's king is safe until this setup is like this. Although I'm a bit worried. Knowing that it's MVL with the white pieces.
I think, you know, it's interesting to call the black king safe, and I agree with you here. Normally I wouldn't. When you're missing an h pawn, there's a bishop on h5, you know, taking the f7 square, and a move like g6 forces your king to stay entrapped. However, usually when you make a move like g6, you need to get your rook to h1 and your queen somehow to the h file, but you have no time to do that. And bishop e3 is a retreat, and now queen takes b4? Is that possible? I mean, can I just scoop up the pawn? And if you take on d5, I've made queen e4 check, forcing the queens off the board, and then the f4 pawn is falling. I'm starting to like black's position here, Anna.
I also started liking her position now even more, because I thought that she was safe and sound, but I actually start seeing opportunities for her because of how the white king is out in the open, and this f4 square is always constantly need to be protected. The rook can come from the second rank. The b4 pawn is hanging. So yeah, why not a win for Valentina against one of the strongest chess players in the world, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave?
Yeah. Actually,
I'm rooting for her.
And what does one do against queen takes b4 here, right? Queen takes b4 is a pawn. Your rook on a4 is, of course, protecting it. And not only that, you're opening up the fourth rank to this pawn on f4 as well. So that, to me, looks like it just scoops up material. And not to mention, after queen b4, if you go queen takes d5, sometimes there's also queen b2 check, threatening to bring your rook to a2 and deliver mates of your own down the second rank, or black's seventh rank. So I think just taking on b4 is a good move. And trading queens is also not a bad decision. And to me, it's clearly black that is better.
I feel the same way. I think she is simply calculating to make sure that after the trade on b4, there's no trouble after rook to c8, pinning the knight, and how can she get out of those tangled pieces?
Yeah, and someone just asked if you're related to a reindeer by chance.
Oh, certainly. Haven't you seen me streaming with my festive mode, often just my trademark nose? I get a cold often, so then I'm even more similar to my cousin.
Well, that is very funny. And some people are accusing us of bias here, but I don't think we are because you and I are both humongous MVL fans. I mean, I don't know if
Of course, no, this is, you guys should take us very light. We are fans of MVL. He's a really nice and funny guy. But in general, I like seeing the underdogs doing well as well, and especially lady players. So you must understand me.
Yeah, and I understand you clearly, and I think that we don't try to have any bias when we do our commentary. It's all about the moves because chess is an objective game. If you start having some biases, you're not playing chess anymore. You're playing a more subjective game. So you need to keep your head focused. And here, why I'm saying that black is doing well is not because it's Gunina with the black pieces. As great as she is, it has nothing to do with who is playing. It's everything to do with the position. And two moves stick out. Queen takes b4, as I've been mentioning. The idea being after queen takes d5, queen e4 check forces an exchange of queens. And I guess maybe here actually, white would be doing well if king f3 were possible to defend f4 twice, but then g6 traps the bishop on h5. So the problem for white is you cannot simultaneously defend the bishop and the f4 pawn without conceding something else. And the move d4 is thematic, opening up a new diagonal for checks. Of course, the white bishop can meet that diagonal with bishop f3 at some point, but you're distracting the bishop away from its defense of the f4 pawn, and so that leaves black with another viable option. I know I really like black's position here, and I think that you need to move a little bit more quickly if you're Gunina.
Yeah,
the time
I was going to say that too, because we have seen Valentina doing very well in the previous game with her time management, but now it really seems that she started seeing some ghosts. It happens to even the best players in the world that you start calculating variations. Eventually she goes for the natural, straightforward line, but she could have played it 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, so it took on b4. All right, so using the pins on the knight. So huge problem for black is knight takes f4 check looks good, but bishop f4, rook f4, e6, threatening e7, like we saw in another game, pinning the back rank, trying to win that knight. But after rook e8, you stop e7 for sure, but now bishop f7 check, and you have to move the king to the side, and then you lose this knight on f8. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on if you are Gunina here. You have to be very careful not to start trying to get greedy. And so, I guess
d4. Okay. Now I'm a little worried because the bishop is actually going toward the useful square, bishop to a3.
Well, yeah.
Though the f4 pawn, yeah, she cannot abandon the f4 pawn. I'm always forgetting that.
So is black just trying to go d3 here? I'm not sure I love that d4 move. I really thought that you can even try to make a move like g6, giving your king an extra square on g7. So you're giving away a pawn to give your king a safe outlet. So that was another possibility that I think Gunina had. But here, rook b3 to go to rook c3 is something to consider as well, because your knights do well to defend each other, and rook b3 played. So I'm doing a decent job of predicting the moves. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It remains to be seen if it's a good move.
It's always a good thing, especially with my queen f5 and I blundered the queen. It's just like Luka Lenic. Yeah,
so here things are looking good for Gunina. I'm going to take a peek over at Fablibi's game. That is, unfortunately, your boy Maurizi lost, so I just want to show everyone the final position. What I was talking about sort of happened where the king went up, but unfortunately, okay, it took this way. So if knight takes f8, e7, e8, queen is unstoppable. So instead, he played. He's just completely losing here. White got a queen, is up too much material, traded off the remaining queen, and won the game. So unfortunately for Maurizi, not happening for him today. So this leaves us with 3 games remaining in the match for this particular round, and the score is 2.5 all. Migraines, Blockbusters tied at this stage of the game. Okay, we have to go over to Bacro's game if you don't mind, Anna, because...
Certainly, let's go back to Bacro.
Whoa. Whoa.
Vachi 83.
Whoa. That's all I can say is just whoa.
I still need to open it, so that's why I'm not saying, oh, I'm a bit slow.
You're going to say it in a second.
Whoa!
Yeah, this is...
Guys, I'm not always seeing the same screen as Robert, as you can tell, but
wow.
now I do.
I mean, this king is not happy. And very importantly, and this is the board 4 that we were talking about.
Please clip it.
You know, the board 4 we're talking about where you know, he's high rated, but he's getting really in a lot of trouble here. And now after pawn takes f6, the simple response here, as Vachier will play, look at this knight on b8. It's now hanging because of the bishop on f4. Bishop takes f6, runs right into queen h4 check, queen h7 check, and if you look, king f8, bishop d6 wins the queen because bishop d6 pins and queen takes f7 wins. So pinning and winning, we got another Walt Clyde Frazier type of reference.
Pinning and winning.
Just
I like that so much. Robert, you're on fire today. I think the t-shirt is inspiring you. So let's just show it once again, your t-shirt.
All right, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This isn't a Ninja Turtle game, but it is a migraine versus blockbuster battle. So this checkmate by force essentially happening here, and Vachier will not miss it. And I don't think the t-shirt's inspiring me. I think you're inspiring me, Anna. So it's you know.
Thank you so much. You are too kind.
I mean, we're just a friendly team. We're doing our duty here.
So now, after queen h7 check, king f8. Wow! Look at that move, bishop d6. Of course, it's not such a difficult tactical motive. In case of queen takes d6, mate was coming on f7. He doesn't even take the queen on e7 because it's mate in 1, queen h8. Well played by Etienne Vachier.
Yeah, he won the game here. I mean, checkmate on the back, and this pin was great. And, well, we saw it coming, and there it happened. So Vachier gets an important win for the migraines. And that leaves us with back to MVL and Gunina. Whoa, okay, we're in an endgame where it looks like Gunina should, okay, this is getting very tricky. So if you get a queen, and Gunina doesn't have that much time, you get a queen, as has happened, they're going to take, king d2. Actually, e6 right away might be better. e6 is a great move. I think e6 wins on the spot.
MVL against Valentina. By the way, there was a question about her title. It's a grandmaster title, not the woman's grandmaster. She is a man's grandmaster.
Well, you know, it's not a men's grandmaster. She's a grandmaster, right? There is no...
yeah, well, just to highlight the difference, she actually got the highest possible chess title.
Yes, she is incredibly strong. A longtime team member of the Russian national team, has won plenty of gold medals. And right now, she is going to have to use everything inside of her chess knowledge to save this game. Because if you look, this past e-pawn is going to try to do damage. Knight g6 looks like a great attempt, but unfortunately e6 comes. This knight on c1 is still stuck. If you move your knight away from g6, e7 comes. If you go king g8, e7 still comes with a check on the king, and then e8 will be a queen. So a lot of threats here. So knight g6, e6, okay, this is all kind of expected. And now king g6 is a nice looking move because the king is trying to actually come to h5 and g4. The knight on e7 is a great blockader. And if the king can come around to g4, white will not be able to make progress once the king sits on g4 and g3, attacking the f4 pawn. Yeah, so... you know, everybody, thanks again for everyone tuning in. Almost 9,000 viewers here.
We have hit 9,000, then it dropped a little bit back, but I'm sure that we're gonna bring it up once again to over 9,000. This is the Pro Chess League. This is Chess.com and Twitch, bringing you the best players from all over the world in the top team competition online. Make sure to follow the channel of the Pro Chess League to get notified the next time we go live, so that you don't miss any of our streams. This is not a one-time thing. This is every season, every year, Pro Chess League, and we are just starting the playoffs.
Yes, and everyone should follow this channel so they can continue watching, because there is another match next week. Will be the quarterfinals and the semis, and the finals will be live in San Francisco. I will be there on site with Danny Wrench. That is the vice president of Chess.com. Everybody knows Danny. He runs Chess TV.
And also the best singer we have out there.
Yep, and Alexandra Botas, who just did the commentary with Danny Wrench, will join us. So the three of us.
I love Alexandra, so I would go for Alexandra and you, and maybe Danny.
Danny's
and
okay.
And the teams that make it to the finals.
Yep, and here in this position, as I see Danny Wrench chatting in the Twitch chat, but look at this king on h4 here. So it hits the bishop on h5, but very importantly, it's just going to stick on these squares. these two squares, g4 and g3, where it attacks the f4 pawn, because the only way white can try to win this game is by getting the king into the d6 square. But let's say the bishop moves to f3, the king goes to g3. There's no time to ever move your king away, as the f4 pawn is always saying. So king g4 here. If king d4, I simply take on f4. I take on g5. I go with my king back to f6, and black is the one who would be potentially winning that position. So knight g6 is an unnecessary move, but it doesn't make a difference because the e-pawn still can't move. This locked down, and that's the problem, Anna. We love bishops in endgames because they have great scope. Right, this bishop controls an entire diagonal. Whoa!
Oh, look at that move by MVL, bishop e4.
Wait, that was a nice attempt, but knight e7 back. Okay, so the idea was if you take, you lose, because now all of a sudden pawns are running free between the f and e pawns. So good response immediately by Gunina not to get herself in more time trouble. Just knight e7. And I was going to say, bishops have great scope in the endgame. So look at this entire diagonal taken control of by this bishop, but the big problem is that cannot change colors. The bishop would love to jump to b4 or something like that where it attack the knight. Unfortunately, that knight is not possible to be kicked out of its square. It's sitting happy, and
bishop takes f5.
Wait a second.
What is this?
Yeah,
is it winning? I mean, okay, he wants to play king f6 and e7 or take on g6.
So king e5, this is a draw. Thankfully, knight d6 check. Okay, knight d6 is a draw. King e7, knight f5.
He has ported.
Yeah, but
MVL.
Knight g7. Yep, and now the king comes over to catch the g-pawn. So, whew.
Top French player, one of the strongest grandmasters in the world with the white pieces. He has spoiled his advantage. Valentino saves the game for the blockbusters.
Yeah, great.
Clip it. You need to clip this.
Yeah, and for those watching, you have to clip it. Gunina saving that half point with the black pieces, which is especially important, which means that her teammates between Libazuski will get white against MVL and thus can try to hold him to another half point less than he wants in this match. So we're on to Fontaine and Gazzoli.
What a defense by Gunina, just believing that she could still hold it, even though it was a very, very much lost-looking position. But she kept playing with 20 seconds on the clock, bad position, simply holding on to what she could.
Yeah, and then we're stuck over here with a not as interesting game between Fontaine and Gazzoli because look at the black pawns, all on dark squares. This white bishop on a dark square. So where can this bishop go? There's not a single useful square at the moment for the bishop on f2 to go to. And white would maybe wants to go c4 and knight b3, but that also opens up the b4 square for the dark square bishop for black. So a5 is the target that you need to attack. And here's knight c4, respond knight c6, game is a draw.
Draw has been agreed.
I was going to say that the only way to try to play is going knight b3 and suggesting that maybe your king can get into the action. But knight b7 is probably what you're going to meet White's plan with, and after c4, you can even go something like c6. Not that you need to do that, but king c4, definitely c6. Don't let this king into the game. So, or king c6. But the point is that the king does not get in, and you are able to just hold the position. It's a very funny looking position where black is just in the nick of time to hold. So what's the score in this match? 4.5, 3.5. Migraines are in the lead.
Migraines still in the lead. They are the favorites, and they also have draw odds in this match. Let's just remind everyone that this is a knockout system, the playoffs of the Pro Chess League. There are certain teams that did better in the first stage of this year's Pro Chess League, the second season of the Pro Chess League. So the Stockholm Snowballs and the Marseille Migraines will advance in case of 8-8. So it's 4 rounds in total, 4 players, 16 games. If the Migraines and the Snowballs reach 8 points, they will advance to the next round.
Yep, and that's all they need. So they're well on their way. They're more than essentially if they can just get 3.5 more points, then they move on to the quarterfinals. So we're going to go back over to Stockholm and Ljubljana, and the Turtles surprisingly ahead. They say slow and steady wins the race, and for the Turtles, they've jumped out to the lead here. So good performance by the Turtles, and I'm focusing on Luka Skuhala right now because he is the board 4 for the Turtles. He is their lowest rated player. He's rated 2100, and he's facing another grandmaster here, but he has performed admirably. He beat Evgeny Agras with the black pieces. With the white pieces, I'm really digging his position because that king on f7 is not looking too comfortable. Sure, it's still early, but I'm going to pull up a photo of Skuala here. You know, he's wearing a hoodie in this player card. He said he looks very young. You told me he's 19, but he is a strong player that no one is getting a free point against. And
certainly not. He performed way above his rating in the first stages of the Pro Chess League, and he's proving once again that he's a very strong and dangerous player.
And here in this position, so what you have to always keep an eye on is if somehow this queen and bishop team up on the b2 square, white can be in trouble. But my idea from white is, okay, Anna, there's a king on f7. King is not happy on that square. So what about the move g3? The idea being, I'm trying to blast open this g file for my rook and my queen, and if you think you're going to take on g3, I take back right away, and all of a sudden my queen's coming to g6 with great force. So it's getting very complicated. I don't like black's king's position. I have to believe anyway g4. So his idea, wow, that is great.
Nice.
Even, you know why that's even better than what I was saying? Was I was trying to open the G file. He's saying you could take en passant if you want, but now my queen is here, as we were discussing. But if you don't take, my knight on f4 will come to h5, and from h5 it will attack this bishop, it will attack the pawn on f6. So it's just, I don't know, to me it's already looking close to a dominating position where Alexienko, the grandmaster, 450 points high rated, he is the one who will be groveling to survive.
I agree with you that I'm not happy about the f7 king, and this g4 idea I really started liking.
Yeah.
So the Turtles, who were the last, let's just recap that in the standings, 4 teams advanced to the playoffs from each division, and the Turtles were the 4th,
yes.
in theory the weakest team. But there's one thing that I found very interesting on the standings when I was looking at it. So they were the 4th team, but in game points, they had loads of points, the 2nd highest team in the division. So even though their match points, they did not win many matches, they were actually collecting many game points, which means that they are certainly not a team that's way below the strength of the other 3 teams.
Yeah, and they use a pretty straightforward lineup. 3 grandmasters and one of the Skuhala, I think they're brothers, on board 4, because there's another Skuhala who plays for them. And now this move was played with taking on g3, queen takes g3, and bishop h6. So this g6 square is ripe for the taking, but unfortunately at this current moment, white is unable to play knight g6, which would fork the rook on h8 and then the queen on e5, because knight g6, while it does hit a fork, unfortunately blunders the queen on g3. So don't do that. If you're Luca, he played queen g6 check, king e7, and now how do I move my queen so I can go knight g6? Whoa. Whoa, if this works, candidate for move of the day, if it works.
So what's the idea? E takes d5, and now he wants to play e takes or rook f5.
Oh, rook f5 is also an interesting idea.
I was wondering why he wants to get rid of the e6 pawn, so there were these 2 options.
But did he just get his queen trapped?
It looks like, and if you have to trade queens, then why did you sacrifice a piece?
Oh, that is unfortunate. It was a great looking idea to try to use the e file, an open e file with a king on e7, but after rook g8, that white queen has nowhere safe to go. And if that is the case, then it is huge trouble, because queen f5 takes, bishop takes. Maybe there's some like outside chance at holding a position like this, but it's really not good when black is up a piece. Although white will get probably a 2nd pawn in the process. But so here, your idea of rook f5 has to be better than rook f5 coming in to threaten pawn takes d5 with rook e1 check ideas, and the king on e7 is an unhappy, unsafe king. Yeah, not looking good.
This is definitely not what he had on mind when he played knight d5. So what is it that he has missed? Did he miss that the queen cannot move after rook g8? Or what's the idea? Knight d5 check. He clearly wants it to be taken, and then he took back on d5. He was aiming for rook e1, but probably he forgot that rook g8 is coming first.
Exactly. So he was just looking for it, but he unfortunately lost his queen in the process. And that's sometimes what happens when you focus too much on your own ideas and don't necessarily consider your opponent's all the options. And you just say, I'm going to crush him. I'm blasting you up with his king. I'm going to win the queen. But your queen, unfortunately, even though it's in a menacing square on g6, is under direct threat. So everyone who's asking in the chat, by the way, you can go to prochessleague.com. And that is the official website for this. And everyone, please also follow this channel. This is where the commentary will continue to happen. After this, there are still 2 more divisions in the playoff round going on today. So there's a lot more chess to see this week, next week, and then, of course, the grand finale in San Francisco, April 7th and 8th. But we still have a lot to play here, as this match between the Turtles and the Snowballs is there's a lot left to play for. And I don't even know which game. I'm scrolling through them now live on the stream because I don't know which game to look at. I don't know which one suits your fancy.
Oh, this is just so exciting. I would pick many, many games. Let's have a look at perhaps the game of Michelangelo versus Eterga. Agorist with the white pieces against Luka Lanic, who's coming from this really painful loss against Alexeyenko.
And it looks to me, so how did this rook just get to f2? So he went h6. So white is trying to soften the squares around this black king, in particular this g7 square. But queen b5 check, and now rook takes f2. The idea being is, well, king takes f2 is a free rook for the moment, but after queen b2 check, I snatch this rook on a1, the c3 pawn becomes weak, and unless you're getting a quick checkmate, black all of a sudden is scooping up many of the remaining pawns. So it's a bit of dangerous position for white. So is there a useful in-between move? H takes g7 was played. I don't like that move. Really don't like that on, because this pawn protects the black king, and very importantly, there will never be back rank checkmate ideas. I'll just show everyone. I know we got a lot of people who joined from the main Twitch page, but to show everyone what I mean is if this rook came to c7, which let's say I make some random move just to show everybody, this rook came to c7, there's a back rank checkmate on the board, right? The only way you can stop the check is by continuing to block, but eventually you have to move your queen back. I take it, it's checkmate, okay? By taking on g7 in the game, like this, now anytime you deliver a check on the back, my king can come up and take this pawn on g7. So that black king has an escape route, and that's why I think that this decision should favor black more than anyone. And in fact, it's very difficult to foresee how white is going to team up on this h7 pawn. That's the real idea by taking on g7, is somehow get your queen over to the h-file and deliver a mating attack. But with the knight on f5, the rook on f2, a move like queen b2 is very possible here. I'm not seeing how to continue for white. So Luka Lanic has a lot to consider here. I guess, Anna, I should say that g6 is a really interesting threat as well.
I agree with you, and I think it was very instructive how you highlighted that capturing on g7, it looks like you are weakening black's king, but actually he is going to use the g7 pawn as a shield, and also there's no back rank mate because of having a white pawn on g7 and not a black pawn. So I agree with you that suddenly after queen b2, black's position is looking good once again, but good in comparison to how it was before. I'm not loving it. I still feel like it's just really, really complicated with chances for both sides. But certainly h takes g7 looks like it was helping black's case.
Yeah, I am. The only thing I'm really concerned about is, let's say I make a random move like a6. This move g6 is really powerful, because if you take with the h pawn, my rook goes to h8 and I win your rook on c8. So just to show everybody that variation, you have to take my pawn, and then I take a rook on c8. That's extra material for white. If you take on g6 with the f pawn, then my queen takes on e6 with check, and I'm winning the rook on c8 anyway. Though I do have to be careful about this knight on g2 hanging. So maybe it's not the clearest thing in the world, but it seems like white is the one attacking first anyway, because king g7, queen d7 check as well. So just to keep this g6 move in mind, you went queen d2, which, how does that stop g6?
I don't know.
So why did he play
Why did
g6?
it stop g6?
Oh, okay, g6, rook
understand.
takes g2 check. That's a nice tactic.
Oh, okay.
He's making, the queen is overloaded, so I missed that the queen can win the rook on e1. So g6 is not working. So rook b1 played and rook e2. So now the rook does well to defend the e6 pawn. which looks like it doesn't need defending, but as I keep saying, g6 was indeed a threat. But now queen f3. Oh, is this what's happening? Wait a second.
Rook e2, it is happening.
I don't think it works. I was trying to go rook takes c3. So queen b7 was played, but I was thinking queen f3. The idea now is to go queen h5 and deliver a sort of checkmate on h7. And rook takes c3. Try and distract the queen, just backfires after rook b8 check. King takes g7, rook takes h7 check, and my queen comes with the check and a mating attack along the h-file. So you're ripping the king open for white, and now queen b7, good move knight d6, and queen back to f3, but it feels like white's going wrong here. I mean, now rook takes c3 is possible. In fact, rook takes c3 is looking, there it is, played.
Who's running in this position? Now it looks like black has got the upper hand.
Yep, because rook b8 check is now nicely met by the knight c8 move. The knight comes back and the rook defends. So unfortunately for Agres, it looks like he just wasn't seeing the tactics clearly, and the knight, which was on f5, came back to d6 and protects this very vital c8 square, and thus there are no back rank problems that you have to overcome.
Wow, this game was really such an exciting game. It is still exciting, but it certainly looks like white has missed some chances.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I just want to give, I don't know how to pronounce this, her Hero IAKZ a shout out in the Twitch chat. Anna looks like she is having the time of her life. I wish I could be as happy as her. And I mean, you know, I'm happy just reading that comment.
It's easy. Smile a lot. And listen to cheerful music. And sunshine also helps.
You know what? You're saying all the right things here. And you know, it makes me happy to see Anna happy. So this is a great comment to read. I just had, when I saw it, I had to read it out loud for everybody to hear.
Oh, I've seen so many comments about you, but we were in the middle of variations, so I couldn't read out all the how Robert is the best commentator, how Robert always brings high quality commentary, how Robert is the most stable commentator. So I have read all those, and I was going to tell you once we had a chance.
Oh, well, you know what? I wanted to make this moment about you. You're just so kind and selfless that you had to return the favor. So this is great. And look, so it goes, Anna is the sun and Robert is the moon.
No, Robert is also the sun, and he has the coolest t-shirt ever. Let's show once again that t-shirt, Robert. I love it.
You're really making me show off my wardrobe.
Show it to our 9,500 viewers on Twitch. Shout out to everyone just joining us. Make sure to hit that follow button, because this is not a one-time stream. There will be many coming up, and you should be notified when we go live. So hit the follow button.
Wow. And as soon as, you know, I was about to say this one's for Luka Lenic, Agres finds a great move here with queen takes e2. And he got rid of the rook on e2. And if black captures the queen on e2, then rook takes c3 happens, and this knight on c8 cannot be defended. So if anything, it's white who just snatched the upper hand. He kind of is, what I would say is snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, because I was sure that he was going down in this game, and now I think he's on the verge of winning all of a sudden. So rook c1 check might be the move to play here. That way, oh, and the king f2. So you can't even go rook c1 check. What? So is black going down? The white king is not safe.
I completely missed the last couple of moves, and now when I look back, I don't understand what has just happened.
The game just got crazy, to say the least, and now all of a sudden white is up a lot of material. Let's take this knight on c8. Okay, I don't know.
Ooh, we called it early when we thought that black was already having the initiative and doing very well. Yeah, crazy game, but Luka, not Luna, Luna would be Moon. Yep. Luka Lenic has only 9 seconds, so that's a factor too, but too much material for white, and yeah, mating that too. It's king on h5.
Evgeny Agres coming out of nowhere with this one. I really thought he was just dead in the water. Now rook b3 is a good move, because the rook on b3 can swing to h3 or to g3 and keep the white king safe as well. So rook b3 is always going to be nice. Rook g7 is a second good option just to attack pawns on f7 and h7. So he went rook g7. Evgeny Agres coming out of nowhere to the rescue for the Snowballs, because they need this. They're tied 4.5 since, what's his name, won his game. Alexienko beat Skuhal in the game we looked at earlier. I have to go over to this game. There's 1 second left played by Orndal here. And with the black pieces, Orndal is going down. He's down a pawn, so he's down this very lovely d pawn, but his rook is great. So the black rook is doing well to cover the king's outlets. But 3 seconds for black. Okay, now up to 6. So 6 versus 13. I mean, Anna, how do we even keep pace with this? It looks like black should be...
I don't know. When I see they have only 10 seconds or less on the clock, I start to be more nervous than the players. Tarrasch rook for white, supporting the c post pawn. That's how you should do it. This is what you should learn. Rook endgames. Put the rook behind the pawn, not in front of it.
And now king to d4 to c5. This is great defense of the pawn. But king e7, king c5, rook b5 check. Wow, all of a sudden black is turning the tables here. And king has to go back to d4 because if king c4, the king comes to d6. Whoa. King d6. King d6. Okay, you're getting yourself in trouble, Sebenik. I was about to count the snowballs out on this board, but all of a sudden they're board 4, the lowest rated player for their team. Wait a second. Now king c7. Okay, or f5 check. Put this king on c7.
Now king c7, yes.
Is black going to go up a pawn here? Looks like it to me. Now rook d6. Just go
it didn't feel like a pawn up before with this very strong c post pawn, but white gave time to black to actually bring his king to the blockading square c7.
Wow, this is fascinating. And Georg Meyer only has 5 seconds left as well. And not to mention, okay, I'm just going through all these games really quickly because look at Evgeny Agrest. He's playing Luka Lenic just 1 second and didn't flag. 0.5 seconds left when he made his move. The queen on b1, guns for the g1 square. Now the king is forced away from it. But all of a sudden, Luka Lenic is still fighting in this one. And let's see Georg Meyer. This is ridiculous. Georg Meyer also in an ending with the white pieces. He's about to queen. His opponent's about to queen as well. It looks like black should be ahead here. That is Jiri Borishek for...
Donatello, your favorite.
Donatello is my favorite because the king goes to b2 and the black rook is in time. So king b2 here, threatening rook b7 and c1 equals queen. So he went rook b7 first. Shouldn't make a difference. King b2. Followed up with c1 equals queen, and now all of a sudden, Georg Meyer is going down. c1 queen, you resign.
Wow.
You have to take. So, okay, gonna have to get away from this one. Donatello wins. Praise
Donatello on 100% score, beating the top board of the snowballs. Georg Meyer, who never loses an endgame, now he does.
Yeah, and this one between Sebenik and Orndal, look at this same concept as in that Meyer game. Both sides with very fast pass pawns. But I think, who's winning this? It looks like, okay, get a queen, you take, and then king f7, and I think black has played e5 there. And after take on e5, you both queen at the same time. Black queens with check, the game is a draw. So Sebenik saves his team here, saves the half point by making a draw in this game. And I'm like, so much commentary so quickly that I don't even know the score of the match.
I have no idea. We should look it up because this has all happened in the last 30 seconds. What is going on?
And wait, Agrest lost all of his rooks. What happened here? What? Michelangelo wins? What in the world happened? Oh, he blundered his rook. He went rook to b7, trying to deliver a checkmate on the back rank. Trying to go rook b7, followed up with rook a8 checkmate. He goes rook b7, and his rook on a3 hangs with check. He goes king g4, and after queen to a8, he still should be fine here. There should be a draw. But he blunders a second rook with queen c3 check, and the queen picks up the b2 rook. And then Agrest had enough. He said, I'm resigning. I have a knight and pawn, which can give me faint hopes for a draw, but holy cow.
Goodness me, how can you blunder 2 rooks in 5 moves?
I mean, that is just, I'm in disbelief. How does that happen?
Flip it, this is such a painful moment for Grandmaster history.
Oh my, did Ljubljana just go 3.5 to half in that round? I think they did.
I think they did.
And they're up 7-5. So the Stockholm Snowballs need to win 3-1 just to stay in the playoffs. They were such a large favorite. They were doing well in this round in some of their games. And all of a sudden, the Turtles, the fighting, not quite teenage, but adult Mutant Ninja Turtles are leading the charge. Holy
Goodness me. We just claimed that white was completely winning 2 rooks and the knight and the pawn against the queen. That's basically a position where you can just resign shortly. You don't need to resign immediately, but black had no chance until white decided to step into those tactical motives and drop 2 rooks in 5 moves.
Holy, I mean, I'm just like in disbelief over here. I feel terribly. Like, how does that happen? And you don't see Georg Meyer lose very quickly. very often, and he lost that
Yeah.
one. So we're going to focus on this one as well as the
Wow.
beginning of the Stockholm match, just because we need to keep an eye. It is the final round, fourth and final round of the match. But let's keep an eye on Gunina right now. She is the white pieces against, it's your two favorite players. Anna, who do you root for in this situation?
Oof. This is so difficult. Robert, I don't know what to say about it, but I root for a very good game, a fair game where both players play their best. And, well, in the end, I guess Valentina should win.
Wow, you just, I mean,
I know.
I
Mark is my favorite player from the Migraines, but Valentina, I need to support other lady players.
Okay, that's fair. You know, there will be some tears perhaps shed from Maurizi, but he'll get over it. Now, everyone should know.
I hope he won't see this.
You really do.
Please don't clip it.
He was hoping for rook takes h5 because bishop d1 check would have actually picked up the rook on h5. And after what we just saw in Stockholm versus Ljubljana, I mean, blunders galore. I have come to expect the most surprising and unexpected at this point. There are going to be blunders. It's a part of chess. Let's check on Leon Beast, that is Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, to see if he... Whoa, what? Speaking of crazy things...
What has happened? What has happened? Let me join you. Let me join the fun.
Well, the game is over as soon as I get there. Commentators curse. And by the way, I think people are clipping you talking about rooting for Gunina.
Don't send it to him. He's just such a nice boy. He's my favorite. Right after fellow lady players.
That's fair. I think, you know, you've been rooting for Marc-Andrea all season, so I think they can now respect that. But
yeah.
In this game, look at this move, bishop takes e6, forcing resignation on the spot. It's two
Wow.
rooks, two minor pieces each, but white's pawn structure is much better. Not to mention the two bishops are in white's favor. The pawn structure is very nice and compact for white. There are ideas playing like moves like f5, so that was another possibility, but bishop takes e6. All of a sudden, if bishop takes h6, rook g6 check, the pawn on f7 is pinned to the king. The bishop is now under attack, and no matter where the king goes, there will be trouble. If you go to f8, I simply take the bishop on h6. If you go bishop g7, I pile up pressure on the g file and win your bishop. If you go king h7, I gobble up your pawn on f7, follow it up with rook h1, takes h6. So that one's over. Game over. That is MVL winning that one, which leads the Migraines to a 5.5, 3.5 current lead.
Wow, so the Migraines leading as expected, but the Turtles, that could be the upset of today's Pro Chess League season. Well, the Indian clash was horrific. It was so exciting. We did not know if the movers will advance or the dynamites. They were basically lining up the Olympic team of India in two teams in the Pro Chess League, headed by former world chess champion Vishy Anand. So that was epic to see. And now the Turtles making an upset. I'm going to be using some of my cool emotes now for the Turtles. This goes for the Turtles. And you have these if you are a subscriber on the Chess.com channel. Now, those of you asking if you can subscribe to the Pro Chess League channel, not yet, but coming soon. Be patient. For now, follow the channel so that you get notified when we go live. Follow the Pro Chess League channel.
Okay, I have all of the games open for the round. So all the games that are left are open. We will stick for now with the all-French matchup just because the time is less in their match, but it is the fourth and final round for Ljubljana and Stockholm. And with Ljubljana ahead and Stockholm needing 3 out of 4 just to stay in the league, we're going to have to go back and forth. So Fontaine with the black pieces is not doing very well. Oh, wait, he's not. I thought he was down a pawn, but he's not, so I take it back. It's just one of those positions, again, I see a pawn advance, this pawn d5 in particular, and I assume that white is up a pawn, though he is not. And if that's the case, then black is actually doing okay here. Because
yes, he just needs to watch out for his king's safety. But it doesn't look like white has a way of cracking this defense.
I agree with you, because this square is very well defended, though bishop h5 is a potential threat. For example, bishop d7, just to get extra defensive, bishop h5, Although maybe king h7 is possible, just adding to the protection of the square. So it's a very complicated looking position. But then again, black is stuck here. If I can make a move like rook g3 or something, it's not like black has any useful move. Maybe use this b pawn and start rolling down, but there's no real big threat from black either. So, yeah, wow. Okay, there's other games left. Who is this? This is Nuki, and board 4 for Cannes is Harutyun Barsigan, and Nuki is up how many pawns? That's Gazzoli. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on 1. 4 pawns advantage.
That's a lot.
How
did he do that? Like, how do you get so many pawns and don't advance them?
Well, this is pretty simple. So we're going to kick this game out of our rotation because you have 4 pawns. This is easy to convert. So Gazzoli and Isles moves on in that one for the Migraines. That will lead them to 6.5 points. So they're getting closer and closer to ending this match as they continue to rack up the points.
So the board 4 of the Blockbusters, strongest board 4 in the Pro Chess League today, I believe, almost to 2,500 on board 4, which is crazy because there's a rating cap. That's why the teams cannot have just 2,700 grandmasters on all board, because there should be a rating average of 2,500, no more than that. So the Blockbusters managed to do their maths and come up with a strategy where they can have an almost 2,500 on board 4, but it's not working so far. He has lost 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to load the bottom, but unfortunately he's losing his games, and Fontaine held a draw. So we talked about Fontaine's record earlier in the Pro Chess League. Today he's doing all right. He's really holding his own. He drew Bacro with the black pieces. Unfortunately, just because he is doing all right does not mean his team is, and that moves the Migraines, I believe, to a 6-4 lead. So Nuki said that's over. That leaves us with Moritzi and Gunina. Gunina up 1 pawn in an opposite color and rook ending. And Anna, I feel like I've seen so many of these type of endings recently. I was, Anatoly Lane, Grandmaster Lane, he passed away recently, but I was looking through some of his older games, and he had a really nice position that this reminds me of, where it's rook, dark square bishop, and 2 pawns against rook, bishop, and 1 pawn. And then it was no pawns, and then he managed to win a nice ending. And here, the key is, look how fast this h-pawn is. And importantly, the white king is very well situated, where the black bishop will not have an easy opportunity to try to stop the pawn via the e4 square. And if you make a move like king a6, already a move like c4 threatens checkmate on the a7 square. So kind of a funky looking pattern, but one to keep an eye on is, your king can get in quite a bit of danger with my bishop very well placed in the d4 square.
You summed it up very well, and I think that's the key here. So while the h-pawn is going to be marching, the f-pawn can be stopped on the f2 square. Right,
that's very important. So rook f6 now can be a good move, followed up by trying to push this pawn. Rook f6 and play h6, and try to maneuver around this f-pawn. The f-pawn will be a bit of a nuisance, but use your king. It's an endgame. There it is. Starting with king d6 is nice. Now rook h7 check is a deadly threat, picking up the bishop on c6. So the bishop needs to find a home. If it goes to e4, well, then rook e6 seems perfectly good. You just keep attacking the bishop, gain a tempo, and like I said, there are checkmate threats in the air. So be very, very careful and be very aware of this rook e7 check, rook a7 mating net ideas. So should we hop to the Stockholm match? We'll keep an eye on this game here between Moritzi and Gunina, and we're going to look at some of these Stockholm games, because Stockholm needs to do work and do it fast. And I'm looking through their games with Borishek and Agrest. Agrest has been sort of the culprit, wouldn't you say, Anna? Unfortunately for him, he had a winning position last game, and he blundered 2 rooks in a matter of 5 seconds. As someone
and in the first game he had 2 pawns up, and then he drew that. We could say that he basically spoiled 1.5 points. It's harsh, of course, to say it, and it's blitz at the end of the game. So we start out with 15 minutes. That's rapid time control. But the end of the game, just few seconds on the clock, anything can happen. Of course, he's a very strong grandmaster, so he would have normally claimed those 2 games.
Yep. I think he just blundered, though. He went queen c6. Very clear idea of getting queen to c2 and trading queens and bringing the knight to b6 to c4. What about bishop takes g5? Isn't that just a free pawn? Because if you take on g5, rook c1 comes in, and there's no way to keep the queen on protecting this rook on c8, so you have to give up your queen. So it looks like Agreste has made a very bad blunder here with bishop takes g5, followed by rook to c1.
Wow.
I mean, he's not in good shape.
This is really happening. Bishop takes g5. And yeah, if I take back rook c1, if I don't take it, then I have just lost the pawn.
And he missed it.
White did not play it.
He missed it. That's a huge oversight. But okay, White is still trying to go f4.
Clip it, please.
Yeah, definitely clip it. I mean, that is unbelievable to me. He has so much time. That's what bothers me. It's not that he missed the tactic, both sides. Is that you need to spend your time and look for the tactic. Because when I see a queen and rook on the same line, I'm like, well, how do I get my rook on that line too so I can hit the queen? And so bishop takes g5 is a pawn that is really a clearance tactic. It clears the square for my rook. So an unfortunate miss if you are Borshek, but he goes f4. And so what he is liking about his position is queen f3 comes very soon. And once that happens, there's a clear threat on the f7 square. Though Black has done well to clog the c file. The knight on c4 is excellent. This rook can actually be a very good defensive piece via h7. And so I think that Black is still hanging in there for the time being. But I cannot believe that...
What a difference. Can we just show it once again in case it was too quick for some of the viewers? There was this beautiful tactical motif that Robert has spotted immediately, taking advantage of the c5, the rook that would have been hanging on c8 after bishop takes g5 and bringing the rook to c1.
Exactly. So that if the Turtles don't go on to win this match, you can, again, here's a moment where you wish you could go back, play this bishop, takes g5, clearance move. The idea is, again, is pawn takes g5, sure, have my bishop, because I'm having your queen. As your queen moves out of the way to b6, a6, or b5, something like that, you lose this rook on c8, which means you have to give up your queen for my rook. In that case, White is well ahead material. So what did happen was all these exchanges along the f line, and White's doing fine here. It's not like I'm concerned with his position. I actually really like White's position in many regards. But winning a pawn for free was just clearly a better solution. So where does that leave us?
That was a missed opportunity for your favorite Ninja Turtle, who's got 100% score so far.
Yeah, and I'm going to take us over to your favorite players with Maurizi and Gunina. Because what we have here is this move bishop to f5. And what Maurizi is doing is, one, he's cutting this rook off so that this pawn can start moving. And very importantly, what just happened was if rook takes f5, which looks like a very good move, because that's a rook takes h5, this h-pawn is finally roaming free. The issue is a very straightforward, you capture on, wait a second, is this winning for White? I was going to say you go f3, but there's bishop d4 and king d5, and my c-pawn goes. So wait, that was just, rook takes f5 is simply winning, it looks like, and a missed opportunity from Gunina. You just remove the protection of this pawn and you push your way home. So, okay, I was going to say that I wasn't winning, but it clearly is winning. So, unfortunately, Gunina missed it and played c4. But the idea is still after f3, what have I been talking about? Checkmate, good luck, you know, bishop d4, king to a5, trying to run to the b4 square. Actually, maybe your king survives for the moment because I don't think I can actually cut your king off fully. Though maybe actually this pawn was hanging with check as well. So I'm blundering now. So wait, c4, what's the idea?
Robert, after 3 hours of commentary, I think it's okay that you make one mistake.
I've made many mistakes.
No.
You know, many mistakes. So I'm trying to...
I'm still the one who can claim the grandmaster way of blundering your queen. That was me. I'm proud of it.
You know, it's okay. I blundered many a queen in my time. So we all make these mistakes every now and then. But I don't understand how a player such as Gunina with 2 minutes on the clock missed this very simple rook takes f5 solution where she would have been able to get out of this position well ahead with an extra bishop. Strange. Very, very strange. So let's see. The other games in the Stockholm match, as Migraines are up 7-4. So, you know, the Cannes really needs Gunina to win the game. And here we have Marcus Orndal against Luka Skuhala. Skuhala with the black pieces has already beaten Evgeny Agreste. And with the black pieces in this game, he made this very interesting move, rook to h6. And the idea is to get this rook to g6 and pile pressure on the g2 square. That said, white can always stick a knight on e4, and if you allow my knight to get to d6, you're in trouble. But if you trade, then white just has more space in an ending. So I'm liking white's position, especially now this rook on h6 might look a little silly, especially if I play knight e4 and trade on e4. The rook is misplaced here. It needs to seek an open file, whereas it's a bit stuck on the flank here. But do you think Orndal will play knight e4, or will he be worried that it liquidates into an even kind of ending? And so he needs to win for his team. So would you play knight e4 here?
It's a good question. It's a good question when you need to take into the team strategy and that you actually cannot just go for an equalish position. It's not the best way to do when your team is losing.
Right. So what would you do? Would you play knight e4? You went with rook d1 check, but would you have gone for these trades on e4? He could still do it next move, but I'm just not sure if the value is quite there. But
well, it's difficult. I think it also depends on the style of the players. He's going for your idea with rook d1 check, and I think like if it was Georg Meyer, maybe he would have gone knight e4. But if you want to create more of a complicated mess with some tactical chances, then you definitely want to keep as many pieces as possible on the board.
Yeah, maybe just put the rook on d6, but I'm always concerned when I start putting my pieces away from my own king that all of a sudden black will launch some sort of quick counter strike on the king side with a move like rook to g6. And I can even go queen g5 to trade queens. And once that happens, the e5 pawn might be a little weak. So it seems like one of those positions where the bishop in the pure endgame, without the queens on the board, dominates the enemy knight. But in the middle game, where the king on c7 could be a bit vulnerable as well, then the knight can do some damage like via e4 to d6. So I think knight e4 will strongly encourage, and that's putting it kind of nicely, black to trade on e4 and then figure out if there's counterplay down the g file, or if you need to swing your rook back to d8 via h8. So,
shout out to Danny joining us once again in the chat. Danny Ranch, the vice president of Chess.com, and to whom we can thank the Pro Chess League together with
looking move because
creator, the founder of the Pro Chess League, Greg Shahadi. Shout out to him as well. I like giving shout outs to people who beat me in fantasy chess.
Yeah, well, he got lucky. That's what I'll say. He didn't deserve to beat you. He got lucky. But speaking of deserving and not getting lucky, Valentina Gunina did end up winning this game because she sacrificed the pawn on h6. She made this bishop d4 move. And I think Maritzi should have went king a5 and tried to run with the king. Instead, took on h6, but now king e5 happens. Rook a7 is checkmate, and the bishop on f5 was hanging. So unfortunately for him, he made some rook b6 move. It didn't really matter. He had no time. And after bishop b6, he resigned and threw in the towel. So Cannes is down 7-5. Ljubljana is up 7-5. So we have the expected result for the Migraines and the unexpected upset in the making for Ljubljana. So I took us back to the Borishek game where we saw that blunder earlier that both sides missed. And we sit on this position. Anna, it's a Caro-Kann, but it kind of looks like a French sort of structure in a way.
It does look like a French.
It looks like an advanced French. So tell me, are you okay with black's cramped king side and like the advance on the king side? Or is, white doing well here? What's your take?
It's just a very weird position. Like, what was the white king doing on h3 to start with?
It just moved away. So you asked a good question.
Yeah.
And now it moved.
Oof, at least improvement. Improve your king, move it away from h3. Kings on the rim are dim, sort of. If it's on the third rank or way above, don't do that. I think the black king is safe now with the knight on c4. So that's very typical in the French and in the Caro-Kann. You really want to get this square for your knight if you can, if the b pawn has advanced to the fourth rank or further.
Right.
So with the c5 controlled by black and the knight on c4, the center is closed. I think black's king is safe. I feel like it's safer than white's king, but it's not so easy to attack white's king either, since white has more space and more room for his pieces to be moved around.
Whoa, I was just wondering, this doesn't work, but so I was thinking h3 looks like the simple move protecting g4, and I was wondering if black is trying somehow to go f5, opening up an attack on the knight on h5 because there's a pin down the g file. But this unfortunately should not pan out because pawn takes f6, And if queen takes h5, f7 is a good move, distracting the rook on g8, because if the rook moves along the back rank, I take your queen. If your rook moves to continue the pin on the g file, I can then promote my f pawn into a nice queen on the back rank. So
I missed this tactical opportunity immediately. So f5, and as you have pointed out, the knight on h5 is hanging. What can white do in that position?
Right, so after that, I think it just doesn't work out because of the en passant. The f pawn is too fast.
I didn't see at the end of the line because I'm not always seeing what is on the border, Robert. So I missed that you were explaining that it does not work.
I thought you were going to correct me because I'm wrong frequently.
No. I just realized it too late. I realized it too late what you were talking about. Rook h8, though, is puzzling. Yeah, the pawn was hanging on h6, but was this necessary?
Sadly, it might have been. So what you said before actually was a great point, and I feel like it's common in Caro-Kann and French structures, is that the king is very safe for black. The king for white is not unsafe, but a little bit more airy on that side of the board. But the pawn structure is much better for white because this pawn h6 is a target. This pawn f7 is clearly a target with double rooks in the f file. And so black always has to keep his pieces stuck, protecting, whereas white can continue trying to make threats. But now with his bishop on f4, maybe your idea is on the queen side. Queen b5, threatening knight takes a3, right? So queen b5 is a sneaky looking move. Oh, queen a4, still maybe with the idea of taking on a3.
Queen a4, similar ideas, just bringing in the queen.
Wait a second. My dream is to put my rook on c2, okay? So
yeah, it's almost happening. Now you're threatening to move the knight away. Can he just go for, well, no, knight e3 not, because you will take that with the queen.
But how about knight b2?
Whoa.
Discombobulating white's forces. And the point is if you take with the bishop or the queen, rook c2 happens and you have a problem along the rank. And so knight b2, okay, well, queen back to e8 and king h1. I don't like queen e8 because white's not playing for a draw. White is enjoying the open f file, then we'll move the bishop f4 later and things like that. So I think was the time to figure out how to use the c file, and a move like knight b2, maybe it's just a kind of a ridiculous move, but I don't see how you're stopping my rook from getting into the c2 square. So I think another missed opportunity from for Agrest here, just getting creative. Need to find those tactics.
Yeah, there are certainly tactical ideas here, but he went back to e8 with the queen. And then to g8, and now he's repeating moves.
So maybe that's good for the team. So 7-5 for the turtles. Let's see the other games. You always have to pay attention to your teammates. So
exactly.
Donatello.
But why is Agrest repeating? It's a draw. It's a draw. Why? The turtles are half a point closer to advancing to the next stage of the playoffs of the Pro Chess League.
We have to check out the other boards. Marcus Orndal for Stockholm is down a pawn, and Lucas Skuhala had previously declined a draw offer. So black up a pawn now. How did this happen? I thought white was doing all right here. So knight e4. Wait a second.
With you, I'm almost there.
So I'm looking at 24 queen f5, and queen e3 giving up the c2 pawn. Why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
What is wrong with queen takes f5 and go into an endgame where only white can possibly be better here? I don't understand that at all. That is a very strange decision. I guess he overlooked that his pawn is hanging, but maybe he thought
or he overlooked, strangely enough, he might have also overlooked that after the capture, the c5 pawn is protected. Like sometimes we have these blackouts when a totally obvious move is missed by a strong player too, because somehow there are these blind spots in our calculation.
Yeah, because rook c1 would be a really good move trying to get after the c5 pawn, but queen g2 is checkmate, right? So you have to be able to see that you're getting mated before you're doing any of the mating. And now queen b5, I mean, black
that's what Bragg is pointing out in the chat, that he might have planned rook c1. So there's so many ways he could have missed that this was good for black.
Yeah, and so let's see the other games. Georg Meyer, he has the black pieces. It's still sort of a typical position here, nothing too amazing, but what I like from black's perspective is he's unleashing pressure, unleashing a potential attack over there on the king's side with his rook on the f file now potentially open. He can make moves like rook to f7, swing the other rook to f8, and white's kind of counterplay, if you will, the way to get some activity is not clear to come by. So I'm liking black's position just because you're the one initiating the tension. You're the one who can decide when to release the tension to take on g3, or as I was about to say, and he did it, play h5, h4. So the knight is better than the bishop in this case. Even if the bishop on b7 is a little bit silly, the bishop on g2 is not any better. And what decides the current state of the game is good knight, bad bishop.
I love the good night. Especially now that it's 11 in the evening for me, but it's okay. It is just so exciting, the Pro Chess League playoffs, and an absolute pleasure to be commentating with you, Robert.
I was not trying to kick you off the air, and I will eventually wish you a good night, and sleep well. I'm sure, I know I get exhausted after doing hours and hours of commentary, but for now...
No, we are not going anywhere. Guys, don't worry, we are staying. This is the final round between the Turtles and the Snowballs.
Whoa, what is happening? Okay, we have to go back to the Skuhala game because now all of a sudden white is the one attacking again. What happened here? So it looks
I
like
missed something and I need to go back to see it.
Yeah, black went for h4 move 29, trying to break open the king side, but just allowed this move rook d6 to be played. And now after queen e8, it's white who's gaining the upper hand here. And you have to be very careful not to just lose in the next few moves if you're black here. So how do you do this? What is the proper way forward? Obviously, queen b6 check will always be tempting. You can go king f2 or king g2 and just protect this g3 pawn and make sure nothing happens on that square. But there must be something tactical in the air. I feel it. Queen b6 check played. So king c8 only move. If you go king to b8, rook d8 check wins the queen on e8. So king c8 only. How do you end this game?
This looks like a winning position for white. Queen a7, very logical, threatening queen a8. Black's pieces are helpless. The queen on e8, the rook on g6. This is like playing against a queen and a rook simply without a thing but your king.
Yes, and I was going to say, Anna, that you need to bring your rook into the game, and look how he's doing it. If king c7, rook takes a6. You give up this pawn on g3, play queen c5 check, and the black king is out of squares, because if you go to b8, you immediately get mated, queen d6 check, king c8, rook a8 checkmate. And wow. Even if it wasn't checkmate, there's a queen hanging on the e8 square. So queen a7 is a nice move, and well, I don't see how you're stopping queen a8 check or rook takes a6, and both of these are going to be just menacing
threats. This is
threats.
Game over. That's bad news for the Turtles, who were very close already to the dream 8.5 points. Let's just remember that the draw odds favor the Snowballs, so the Turtles need 8.5 points or more in order to advance to the next round.
Yeah, and king c7 was played, so now I expect rook takes a6 at the very least, taking off a pawn. Though after rook a6, is there queen d7, just suggesting that I cover some of the vital. No, this can't work. You can even just go rook d6 back. I mean, what's the? You snagged a pawn. You can't be having any difficulties there. So he played rook takes a6. A nice game here by Orndal, and that would make it 7.5, 6.5, and which would require the Stockholm Snowballs only get 1.5 additional points. Remember, 8-8 tie is really a win for Stockholm. So I'm still feeling iffy about Donatello Borishek's decision to make a draw there. I thought he should have played on. But let's see how Kirill Alexienko is doing against Mate Sebenik. Opposite colored bishops. Lots of pawns remaining. 7 on 7. 2 rooks and a bishop each. Who is better and why? My gut tells me white is better.
I will also say the same, because I like the d5 square for the bishop, and that the b7 pawn is fixed on a light square. So it's a potential passed pawn, the b6 pawn or the c pawn.
Yeah.
But it's not clear, of course, at all. This is just the first impression. The a pawn is also a passed pawn. e4 could sometimes happen, although it's controlled by 4 pieces of white.
Right, but that's an interesting point that you're making, that if the black pawn starts running, for let's say I make it h3 and then e5 happens, sorry, a5, and you try to go rook a1, your idea with e4 is very strong, because this bishop on f6 starts opening up on the diagonal. So if you take on e4, d3 happens, and look at that, you win a rook because both rooks are under direct threat, and thus black would win that game. So perhaps you can start using that.
Yeah, that tactical motive is nice, opening up the bishop's diagonal. So who is better in the end in this position? It's a mess. No, it's not a mess, but we would need more time to actually dig deep and see. Rook a1 immediately played by white, stopping a5.
But allowing e4, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask you, like, what is his idea?
Is he going rook e1 back? No, that doesn't work. He's going, yeah, rook e1 back, okay.
Oh, so he just provoked e4 in order to win the e pawn.
But can I take on... No, I don't want to do that. Never mind. It's just a bad move. So he's provoking the move in the e pawn. So now we have to do a pawn race calculation. If I go a5, essentially, if I give up all of these pawns in the center and play a move like d3 and then try to push my a pawn down the board, do I have any chance of playing there? Because right now there's a big problem on the e3. Wow. Okay, e3, just saying I'm going to put my pawn, I advance my pawn as well. If you capture me on e3, same idea. Bishop is now out in the open. This b6 pawn actually can be targeted via d6 or e6.
Robert, I need to interrupt you. Board four, action.
Oh no. Oh no. Wait, what? No! No! How did that happen? Are you kidding me?
He was winning and then he drops the rook.
And that's it. The turtles win the match. Oh my gosh. What is this? Rook a6. He moved his rook back. He should just be winning here. And instead he plays rook b6. Was it a mouse slip? Did he mean to go queen b6? What is that?
I have no idea what he wanted.
What? Oh my gosh, he just blundered his rook. How do you... Oh, even if you're not losing your rook, you're...
He forgot that by moving the rook to b6, he's freeing the diagonal of the queen. He thought everything was winning immediately, and he is completely winning.
Wow, that is
from a completely winning position to dropping your rook and losing the match. Wow.
And I wonder how many people had the Stockholm Snowballs either winning it all or at least making it towards the Final Four, because their brackets are officially busted. As one of my favorite tweeters / basketball commentators, John Rothstein, would say, this is March. And March is the month of madness. And right here, right now, if you're a Stockholm Snowball fan, your bracket has just been busted as your team is officially eliminated from the competition. What a tragic blunder. I mean, Agrest had plenty of moments that were disappointing for the Snowballs, but Marcus Orndal did so well to outplay his opponent in rook b6. No! No, you can't make a move like that, just blundering everything away. Oh, boy.
This is just incredible. A heartbreak for the Snowballs. They were fighting so well in the first stage of the Pro Chess League, in last season's Pro Chess League, and they were the favorites in today's match. Now they are out. They have been knocked out by the Ninja Turtles.
Well, I gotta raise the shirt up one more time because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, well, they're doing it
too strong. There's just too much of the ninjutsu art. Some magic that the Turtles have brought today. And Skuala, well, in this game he was lucky, but in the others he fought very well, and he pulled some points out of his stronger opponent, as well as the other Turtles who did very well.
I'm in disbelief. And so we're going to have to move over to the other match. You know, I know there's 5 seconds left in the Sabenik game, but unfortunately that match is over because the Ljubljana Turtles have officially defeated the Stockholm Snowballs, and that will be disappointing for Georg Meyer fans. Of course, he's very, very popular on Chess.com and on Twitch, so a sad day for Stockholm. So how many games are left in this match? 7.5, 5.5. All 4 games should be in progress. And let's check them out here. Where is Valentina Gunina? Do I not see her game? Do I have it open and I don't see it? Okay, well, let's get Leon Beast. We have that game. Okay.
Oh, apparently Danny called it. I did not see that part of the show, and he actually predicted the Turtles winning. I also have them in my bracket moving on. Although this was just... I just gambled that would be an upset.
Just unreal. Just unreal. Well,
crazy stuff. Congratulations to the Turtles, and heartbreak for the Stockholm Snowballs, very nice team, very nice player. So it's really, we would have managed, if we could, we would have advanced both teams.
Well, I'm getting word that Gunina drew her game, which is she was playing Yannick Gazzoli. So that's a good result for the Migraines, considering they're now half a point from qualification to the next stage. So that leaves Robert Fontaine with the white pieces against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Fontaine is up a pawn in the position that we have on the screen, and the pawns are a little weird, right? Because the black rook is doing nicely on the c file. This pawn on c2 could potentially be a target. The pawn on d5 is clearly a potential weakness, but it's also an asset for the time being. And this pawn on a5 is the real winner from white's point of view, because if it's not captured at some point, it's just a nice outside passed pawn. And actually, I'll go back to the Raphael. Should I go back? I don't know. I feel bad. I kind of want to get... All right, let's go to the Ninja Turtles, just because Raphael has 7 seconds left.
Sure, one last shining moment for the Swedish team as well. This is their last appearance in today's Pro Chess League. Well, in this year's Pro Chess League, I see that only 33% of the people managed to guess that the Turtles would move on. So those of you who have filled in your brackets, this is the Pro Chess League Bracket Challenge. How are you doing, Robert, so far with the matches?
I think I had the first 2 correct, but I did not get this one correct. I think I had the Snowballs, even though I love the Turtles. So I was hedging my bets there. You know, I was wearing the shirt.
Bad. You should never go against your heart, Robert.
Well, you know, I unfortunately am not listening to my heart. I went with the brain, and my brain lost. So let's see. Okay, so the official final result of that match, I believe, is 8.5, 7.5, or is it 9-7? 9-7. The Turtles win, because Georg Meyer did win, but it was too little, too late for Stockholm. They needed 1 more point, and just unbelievable. I mean, you know, your heart has to go out to Georg and the Snowballs. Had an amazing season. But in the end, they just were not up for the task today against, as you had mentioned earlier, on the camaraderie and the team spirit of the Turtles.
Yes, exactly. So the Snowballs claimed clear first place, but tied first, but with them game points, they were first in the first stage of the Pro Chess League, and they have actually beaten all 3 other teams that moved on to the playoffs. So I thought that was really impressive, that from your division, you are the one that beat all the other 3 guys. The other 3 teams.
Yep.
But it wasn't enough. The playoffs are cruel. This is knockout, and they are out.
And we have a question in the Twitch channel about why they don't like the team names like Snowballs and Turtles. Well, the cities pick their own team, and there's a special reason for that. You know, so they were in charge of what they wanted. You know, for the Cannes Blockbusters makes sense considering the film festivals. There's definitely alliteration for some of these teams, but you know, it's their choice. And I really wanted to tell Bernoulli to learn their principles, because Bernoulli principle is what is named after Bernoulli, but I thought that would sound mean if I said it out of context. So I'm not mad at you, Bernoulli, but you know, it's just names. They're just names. They're mascots. They're fun. And you know, no more names, but back to chess. Leon Beast, the Beast from Lyon, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with the black pieces, is still fighting against Robert Fontaine. And I don't know how to evaluate this position, because something tells me that MVL is licking his chops here and loves his position with the queen on d8 now.
That was very visual.
Well, he's going for the pawn on h4 and the pawn on g5. So it looks like he's making progress. h5. Wow. Okay.
I like it. Some action, although it looks like White's king is becoming more weak, even weaker than it was after the push to h5. But actually, he's trying to mess it up. He's trying to do what you should do against strong players. Queen takes g5, and what was the brilliant idea? He takes on g6.
So it's a good idea, but I think the improper execution. I was going to say that, let's say you gave black another move, and you did anything. Just pretend it's black moved. Once you take on g5 with the pawn, then white can play h5 and secure the f5 square. So instead of giving the queen the g5 square, you make a pawn go there. Because now, with the queen on g5 and pawn on g6, you've permanently gotten rid of white's sort of counterplay on this f5 square. So black can swing a rook to the f8 file, f-file via f8, and things are looking good. So queen g4 is now, black is going up a pawn. Queen g4 and bishop takes d5 even. Maybe you don't have to take on d5 if you don't want to give away the d6 pawn behind it, but yeah, h5 here is an option. It just looks like black is the one getting the upper hand.
So there was no brilliancy with h5. It was just an attempt to trade queens. So what was the idea of h5?
Cause confusion.
He did. He did confuse us.
He certainly did. Unfortunately for him, he did not confuse Maxime, because now it's looking better and better. And where does that leave us? So still 7.5, 5.5. If Maxime draws or wins, the match is over. Marc Andrea Morizzi is down a pawn. Sorry, Anna, I think he's...
No, not again. Why? He was doing so well.
Yeah,
he started so well against Fontaine.
It's kind of great because he is fighting every single match. He must be disheartened, but still, he's not giving up. He's coming week after week, board 4, knowing that, you know, he's expected to lose most of his games. And he's had a few decent performances, but for the most part, he's gotten a bunch of zeros next to his name.
Yes, but he's still 11, so I think he's got the right attitude. Remember when he offered a draw to Grandmaster Robert Fontaine?
That was great.
That's the spirit. Just no respect. Doesn't matter what's your opponent's title or rating. He just realized that the position was equal. Why not offer a draw?
Yeah, that was actually kind of awesome. I mean, no grandmaster is going to accept a draw there,
yeah, of course.
when you're up, up like 6 minutes or whatever it was. But yeah, that was so bad. I still can't believe that Queen C5 check game in Stockholm, because if that result had been reversed, Stockholm would have moved on to the quarterfinals, right? If he did not blunder Queen C5 check, that game would have been was on the way to being a win for Stockholm. So that's so
exactly. Well, that's so important that you have just pointed out, Robert. I didn't realize that was that single game that decided the entire fate of the match.
Yep. Sad but true.
Can we bring it up for just one last moment until the rest of the games are not heating up?
Yeah, let me try that.
If you still have it. It's just so important that this one game could have made the Snowballs move on to the next round of the playoffs, or what actually happened after this unfortunate blunder was the opposite, that the Turtles move on, the Snowballs are out.
Yep, and here I pulled up that game just for everyone who wasn't here when it was happening or just needs an instant replay. White was dominating in this position with the queen on e7 because, at the very least, White can always do a million checks and just try to figure out how to make progress. Instead, the opposite of progress was made. In fact, just a total blunder, thinking, okay, none of Black's pieces. For example, if this king was on h1 instead of on g1, this move rook b6 is great. You're winning the b7 pawn with check. It's just over. Unfortunately, by playing rook b6, the queen came to c5 with check, winning this rook on b6, and White was forced to resign. And that is the difference maker. That is the reason why Stockholm lost the match. They needed that win. They would have tied 8-8. They would have moved on. Instead, they're going home, unfortunately, for fans of the Stockholm Snowballs.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I see you guys pointing out that also other players like Grandmaster Agres missed 2 winning opportunities, but that happens when there's short time on the clock. So yeah, they missed some, but I'm also sure that they also got some chances in other games. It's really difficult to weigh the opportunities, but this one was a clearly winning position, just a few moves away from resignation, and then he blundered the rook.
Yeah, that's very sad. I don't even know what to say. I'm just like, I feel pain for that player.
Yeah.
Because you end up blaming yourself. Anytime you're in a team competition and you feel like it's your fault, you really, really blame yourself. And then you start feeling terrible. But, it was a good game until that point. But sad. Very, very sad. And this game that's remaining here, this match, I should say, between the Migraines and Cannes, it's not so close. So the Marseille just needs one draw. And if they can make a draw, then the match is over. And with their team, Bacro with the black pieces in the game I have on the screen, they have Marc-Andrea Maurizi trying to hold this position. He's actually not totally busted or anything. He's down a pawn, but has decent chances just because of his control over there on a lot of the open files and the queen side. And I think Maxime Vachier-Lagrave doesn't want to leave anything to chance and would prefer to win his own game and thus end the season for the Cannes Blockbusters. So I like MVL's ending here. He is now, nope, not up a pawn, but I thought he was.
Almost.
I don't know.
I thought he was a pawn up before.
There's problems along the c file. The move e4 is a big threat. So that's why rook e1 was played. Because if rook e1 was not played, let's say a move like rook to b1, then e4 hits this knight on e2. Because I've distracted your bishop to the pawn e4, and then your knight on e2 is hanging beyond that. So rook e1 and knight d7. So white would love to play knight d4 to c6 in one move, but knight d4 hangs the bishop on c3, which is the reason why rook b3 was played. Yeah, this is...
But after bishop c4, what's the good square? Rook a3. Still feels a little awkward now with the d5 pawn hanging.
Yeah, this is...
Maxime is just so much in control of this game.
Yeah, this is looking really, really good. I mean, the rook on the c file is excellent. The bishop on c3 is stuck. Otherwise, you lose the c2 pawn in many variations. And as you just noted, there's a double team on the pawn on d5. And if you're really not careful, the move e4 will be played. So rook d1 seems to protect d5, but now e4 happens, and the bishop is trapped. And if you remove the guard with my knight, I take back, and now you have to take an e4 as your bishop is still trapped, and bishop takes e2. At the end of that, wins the knight on e2. So white's forces are all tied up. There's no real coordination, and so it should be just a matter of time, and pretty quickly, black should be able to convert this because rook d1 was played, now e4. So exactly what I was just talking about. It looks excuse me. It looks resignable for.
Yeah,
white
he's
now.
dropping a piece now after e4. Once you take on e4, the e2 knight is hanging, so that is game over, which means that the Migraines move on to the next round easily. It's a smooth advance for the French team with the top French player. Both teams, of course, fought very hard, but the Migraines were higher rated and they had a better first stage at the Pro Chess League as well.
Absolutely. So draw odds were not necessary here because the Migraines were just really a much better team today. And, you know, Maurizi couldn't get it going, but let's show his image on the stream here. Marc-Andrea Maurizi, you know, what an adorable... I know how to pull at your heartstrings here, clearly, because every time he comes up, he's he's your favorite. And then there's MVL, of course. He leads this Migraines team. He's, you know, what a trooper coming to play in the Pro Chess League, and not just coming to play. He's so excited about it week after week. He's been an integral part of the league. He has so many fans. One of the top players in the world. He's left out of the candidates tournament that's going on in Berlin now, but he's clearly a name to watch in the present, in the future, and always, because he's just a nice guy, a strong chess player. And here we see Etienne Bacrot and Yannick Gazzoli. So rounding out the Marseille team. And let's get back to...
It's such a powerhouse. 3 very strong grandmasters and an 11-year-old boy who is clearly underrated.
Yep, they are. They're just a great team. And look at this. Fontaine is still playing, which probably is not embarrassing for him, but he doesn't want to play. But when you're at a team event, okay, now he officially resigns. He's not playing to be rude. Right. He knows, of course, Maxime is just completely winning, but it's a team event. You got to at least try. And Bacrot, by the way, drew his game against Fabien Lubezewski. It looks like it petered out into a totally dead rook and pawn ending. They just traded everything here to get to there. Yeah, this is nothing. Draw agreed. So they win the match. They're at 9-6 right now, and I don't think there are any bonus points for winning 10-6 versus 9-7. But for
it's just simply nice to win convincingly. Gives confidence to your players.
Oh, and the reason why I want it to be 10-6 is because that means that Marc-Andrea Maurizi will win his game, And I know how happy that
I would love that, please. Can he?
So we are focused in on that game. And I see a lot of players looking forward to the next match as well. Of course, when our stream is over, do not go anywhere because there's still chess to be played in the Pro Chess League. So, I could pull up the pairings later for the next round as we start making that transition. But here, the Migraines have already won. They are just waiting for their board 4, their worthy board 4, Marc-Andrea Maurizi, to finish his game. And he is in trouble. But if he can hold this, maybe that's a good omen for next week, or a good sign, I should say, that he can hang on against much higher-rated competition.
I would love to see that because he was doing very well in the first game. It was a drawn end game where he lost on time against the top player from the Blockbusters. Then the second game, he lost because, his position was bad. Sometimes it happens.
It does.
But then he was really fighting so well in every game, even against Gunina. Like he fought as much as he could. So it's 0 points for him so far out of 3 games, but he was definitely deserving more than that.
Yeah, and maybe he'll salvage this one because it's not that easy to convert. Black is up a pawn, and it's a big if Black is able to start put a battery on the back rank and go for some kind of checkmates on f1, and particularly f1 would be a checkmate, but that's kind of a long story. So what White needs to do is keep the pressure up. This rook on e3 blockades this e4 pawn, which means that the queen is not getting any checks soon, and a move like f5 is, well, you're asking for some trouble when you play a move like f5, opening up your 7th rank with rooks and queens still on the board. So just like Black might try to bring queen and rook to the back, maybe White is trying to go queen e8 and rook c8 and unleash a vicious attack of his own. So I also see a
vicious attack.
Yeah, vicious attack. I was gonna say I see a Wonder Liang in the chess.com/TV chat. That's Red Nova 1729. His Pittsburgh Pawn Grabbers will be playing in the next series of games. So shout out to a Wonder Liang who's also competing.
Shout out to him. He has done so well in the first stage, and we are expecting the same now against the St. Louis Archbishops, the reigning champions of the Pro Chess League. So that's a very tough matchup for the Pawn Grabbers. But they did a better first stage of the Pro Chess League than the Archbishops, actually. And the other matches between the Minnesota Blizzard, some of you guys definitely know, if not all of you, Andrew Tang and John Bartholomew's team, and they are up against the Webster Windmills. Starting in just 10 minutes, the next matches, so don't go anywhere. The commentators are Grandmaster Jesse Cry and Lawrence Trent, who is enjoying his rest day in Berlin.
Yeah, he's going from Super GM games in the candidates tournament every round to these games, which are very strong players nonetheless. So he's prepared. That's what I'm trying to say, is the candidates have prepared him for this moment. And right now, unfortunately, Anna, I'm sorry to say,
no.
Yep, Queen F1 check, or this move, any move.
Please, no.
Queen takes rook on b8 is winning. Queen e1 check, Queen e3 check. All these moves are winning.
No.
Oh, I feel you really have that kind of sad voice going on, and it's hurting my soul. Not only am I sad for Marc-Andrea Maurizi, but I'm just sad for you. I feel your pain in your voice.
Oh, now he's dropping his material and such, like the queen or the rook or mate or both. Poor Mark. He definitely deserved more than this. He lost all 4 games, but he fought so well. 11-year-old boy. He's going to be a great player. I'm pretty sure. He has fought so well. Congratulations to, of course, his opponent. I was not rooting against him. I was just simply rooting for the youngest boy in our division. And to the Migraines for advancing to the next round. It means that next week, it's Marseille Migraines against the Ljubljana Turtles. Let's just show that t-shirt one more time. Robert, I love your t-shirt.
All right, well, I have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt going on here, but I was going to say that, actually now I don't even remember what I was going to say, so hopefully people could see my Ninja Turtles t-shirt. But yeah, 9-7 was the predicted outcome that the Chess.com statisticians had before, and this came true. The Ljubljana Turtles did surprise Mark and
9 to
Jim,
7 there as well, Robert, but in the opposite direction.
exactly. They fooled us on that one. But this is what I was going to say. I saw in the twitch.tv/Pro Chess League page, someone said, "Thanks, Robert and Anna. Perfect blend of geek and glamour. High praise for both."
Whoa, what is that geek part? No, Robert is very far from what you guys call a geek. He's so much fun, so entertaining, so smart, and he's doing so much more than just chess. So you guys should never call Robert a geek.
I think that's not helping my case. You know, the more things I do, the more nerdy things they're going to pick out, and then the more they'll call me a geek. So, they said Anna is a geek.
Oh, I am a geek because chess is my main profession. I don't compete anymore, but I do all these kind of things like streaming and commentating. I'm a geek. I also have glasses too for the computer screen. Yeah.
How come
and next time I will wear my glasses just to show how geek I am.
No, you're not geeky. Well, even if you are geeky, you're wonderful. I don't think there's any shame in it. But our matches are done. I don't know if the next team is ready to take our place. As it's getting late for you over there. It's what, 11:30?
It is really a pajama time here in Spain. But I really, really love commentating with you, Robert. I think we are a team that's actually complementing each other, not only by wearing the same tone and same shades of color, which is first step. That's what we always do with Sopico, match our clothing.
Okay.
And then I think also we matched in terms of personality, and it was an absolute honor to me to be commentating with you.
Oh, no, it was honestly my pleasure. You don't have to thank me or give me any undue praise, but you're right. I did love the fact that we were matching. We also had to give a shout out to teams in the Pro Chess League because I was eating Indian food in honor of the All India matchup. You were eating some croissant in favor, to give a shout out to the Migraines and the Blockbusters. And well, I guess I'm timed up for us to wrap up here. Anna, I've had an absolute blast here with you. Hopefully next week, well, I don't want to give any hints away to Danny Wrench if you're listening, but if I can be teamed up with, the one and only Anna again, I would not complain one single bit. So everybody.
I wouldn't complain either. I like Robert.
Well, I have to give you the hand motion right back. So we had a great time today. Everybody, we're signing off with Jesse Cry and Lawrence Trent will be on air just as soon as we sign off. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. We had so many viewers from Twitch, new viewers, new followers, and soon to be new subscribers once they get the partner status. But for now, more chess. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. See you soon.